everybody. You're listening to the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Billy Z.
I'm Justin Allen.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Matt Broussard.
And we're going to do something a little different this time around. We have a backlog of episodes that, because I am a bit strapped for time, haven't gotten to editing yet. So we decided we're going to make it easy on ourselves with this one. And what you're going to get from us is about 2 hours of talk. There is no pre-planning, no structure that we have set prior to recording. And we're just going to see what happens. We might talk about comics. We might talk about Bugs Bunny being 75. We might talk about cock and porn, I don't know, but it'll be something. It'll be 2 hours of us on the horn, so here we go. We're Comic Book Bears After Dark.
Can we get a Linda Richmond? The Holy Roman Empire is neither holy nor Roman nor empire.
Oh,
Discuss.
Oh, yeah. The Partridge Family was neither partridges nor a family. Discuss. You know, I grew up with tons of Linda Richmonds.
Yeah, I bet.
Oh my God.
I love the
have no idea
accent.
who Linda Richmond is.
What?
What?
Saturday
No,
Night
I'm
Live.
being totally serious.
Oh,
I have no
okay.
idea.
Mike Myers.
Mike
Yeah,
Myers.
Mike Myers.
Oh, I did
Coffee
not watch SNL in the 90s, so.
Oh. That was the last good era, I think.
I have. Go ahead.
That's unfair. That's
Yeah.
unfair. Come on. I'm a big fan of Tina Fey and Amy Poehler and all those guys.
You're probably right. I just didn't give it a chance.
It goes through those cycles where they have like some, 3 or 4 really good cast years, and then they just kind of, fade away as everybody else leaves the show who's actually funny to go be famous, and then it takes them a couple more seasons to actually get somebody who's worth watching.
Well, why don't we
And
go
then you
around the
have Tim
horn?
Meadows forever.
Yeah.
Ah,
Well, why don't we go around the horn? Who's your favorite SNL performer ever? Start with you, Matt.
That's a tough one. I think I'd have to choose. I'd have to go with Tina Fey. I think. Well, no, sorry, Kristen Wiig. I'm gonna have to go with Kristen Wiig. I do really like pretty much the majority of her recurring characters, and we just watched a movie with her the other night. What was it? It was a drama. Oh, no, I know what it was. It was the made-for-TV movie, the Lifetime movie, Deadly Adoption.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and she was actually, I liked her in it, and I liked Will Ferrell, and I was staunchly defending every weird plot twist that was happening. My husband kept saying, I don't think that part makes any sense, and I was like, that's why it's great. You have to watch the whole thing.
How about you, Mr. Mowry?
Well, I was going to say, you bitch, you stole my favorite. But Kristen Wiig is definitely up there. I do have to go for Tina Fey, and this is, it's kind of like, oh gosh, I just totally blanked her name. So I'm just going to go with Tina Fey for right now, and if I remember her later, I will come back. But Tina Fey's had some of the best, just the best skits that she's written. Not so much the ones that she's starred in, but because she had been behind the scenes and one of the main writers for several years, I think under her pen, a lot of the sketches that they had improved. So not necessarily everything she's done in front of the camera, but behind the scenes and the writer's room has been, pretty good.
Okay. Justin?
Gilda Radner.
Mm-hmm.
oh,
That's a good choice.
Mm-hmm.
Without a doubt, she is my favorite.
Mm-hmm. Brian?
So good.
I'm going old school too. Steve Martin has got to be. And going back and watching old SNL, which I haven't done a lot of lately, but when I was a kid, it was in reruns because I'm old, but I'm not that old. And I loved it. I couldn't get enough Steve Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I guess close second would be Dan Aykroyd.
Okay.
And probably Bill Murray up there as well. But when I think back to all of my favorite bits, it was Steve Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and Martin was only on there for a year or two, right?
He was never regular.
Yeah.
He was
He was never regular.
He was regular enough
Yeah.
though, that the episodes I would see, like,
Mhm.
it seemed like he was cast. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's like Alec Baldwin.
Right, and I think like Alec Baldwin, he was one of the few performers that had recurring characters.
right,
That you would
exactly.
take in, whether it was the wild and crazy guy, those guys or whatever. I'm in total agreement with Justin, Gilda Radner.
Oh,
Yeah.
definitely.
I think
I
we
mean,
need an honorary mention for Phil Hartman though, because
Oh, yeah.
like when I watched the retrospective for their 40th year, most of his stuff like continues to be just as funny decades later. Especially stuff like, what is it, Caveman Lawyer or
Oh, Lord.
yeah. Like,
That was pretty dumb.
it's
and
just
awesome.
really great. Yeah.
I just love his serious, because he always played the straight man in a lot of the more ridiculous sketches and some of the commercials. I mean, the Super Colon Blow commercial is still one of the best ones ever.
Yeah. But I have to say that the best straight man was a woman on that show, and that was Jane Curtin.
Oh,
Oh,
absolutely.
He was the quintessential straight man.
She's
Did you
amazing.
ever see the one where like she starts off Weekend Update with some fan mail saying that she's like, and I want to apologize because people have accused me of being bitchy and I mean to my fellow co-host. I mean, she's going on, she does this plea, this apology, and next thing you know, the next like 10 minutes are filled with the most inane stories, and you can just see like her eyes twitching, like she's not saying it. Finally, Rosanna does something, and she pulls open her chest, and she talks about her boobs being one bigger than the other, and Jane Curtin rips open her shirt and kind of pushes her boobs in her face. She's like, "You tell me, Rosanna Dana," and I mean, just watching her explode or implode throughout the whole thing is hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I will say that in terms of like the sketch comedy shows, as much as SNL was a formative part of my my growing up, I actually think SCTV and then a little bit later Kids in the Hall were, and then a little bit later The State. Like those were really my absolute, like, I liked SNL, but a lot of times I got tired of throughout the ages. But those shows, they burned briefly or relatively briefly, and then brightly. And so, like, those stand out to me even more than, like, SNL.
I mean, SCTV, they would take the most ridiculous you have to wonder, like, where did they, even if you were stoned out of your gourd, where did they come up with this?
Oh, yeah.
Like that Memorex commercial with Ricky Lee Jones and Keith Richards. And then Ella Fitzgerald comes in. I can't tell the difference. I mean, it's so hard to describe these, the takeoff of Evita with Indira Gandhi. Oh my God! I mean, they were just so out there, and I'm glad you mentioned The State. Unfortunately, if you watch The State, I mean, there's some stuff is still funny as hell, like the episode-long musical, The Porcupine Races.
Oh my God! I love that.
But the one that doesn't get mentioned, which is between The State and Reno 911, is Viva Variety.
Oh,
yeah.
God!
And
I used to
I
watch that.
loved Viva Variety.
It was Comedy Central's attempt to kind of recreate The State, but do it in a wacky way, where everybody pretended to be part of a circus troupe. That was just so incredible.
Yeah, it was like Sabado Gigante.
Yeah.
But it's just the contest they would have, like the celebrity impersonators, and you had to guess whether they were wearing pants or not. And the one best episode was Mr. Dauphin, which was the Thomas Lennon character, when he remembered his nights on the town with Eartha Kitt there. Oh my God, it threw every cliche of old films with like the champagne, the superimposition of the champagne bottle blowing and people running through New York City and stuff. I really wish that would appear on home video in some form, because I love that show.
Well, I mean, The State alone is kind of hard to find. I know they did a release at some time ago about the with the DVD collection of the different seasons that was on, but most of the time you can just kind of see some really horrible VHS transfers on YouTube of some of the best sketches, like the Muppet sketch where they're eating Muppet.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that alone, I think every time I see that, I can feel the young, I think like 12-year-old me shooting milk out of my nose.
Oh
like,
my
that's
God.
That's how ridiculous that one is. But
Have you?
there were. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh no, I was going to totally transition. So go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that there was, some of the things with that period of the early '90s, there were a lot of attempts to kind of come up with some kind of, crazy sketch show. I know Comedy Central had a whole bunch. They had The Vacant Lot. They had
Mr. Show.
Mr. Show. Well, Mr. Show, I
Mr.
think.
Show is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean that's still like
That was
all the people who were
Showtime
on
or
that.
HBO or something. That
Yeah,
was,
I think I want to say HBO.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But
And
I mean, most of
Upright
those people all
Citizens
went
Brigade.
on.
That's what I was
Upright
thinking.
Citizens
Upright
Brigade.
Citizens Brigade. I've been trying to think that one.
Yeah,
Well,
that
I mean,
was
it
also
launched the
later.
career. They launched the career of, like Amy Poehler and several other people who have been involved with that. It's just like it's amazing how briefly some of those shows were on the air, but how much of a legacy that they have.
UCB had already a pretty strong legacy before the show, and since it's grown beyond that by having UCB clubs. It's like a franchise.
The first time I ever saw Tina Fey was at UCB because she had a show with Rachel Dratch and Fey, and they were doing skits that ended up on Saturday Night Live years later, like the one with Scarlett Johansson of "Dear Mr. Willoughby" with all that crazy shit, and I saw that a good 4 years before that ever was on SNL. And I saw UCB, the actual group, a couple times, but I got to tell you, no one on UCB, and this includes Amy Poehler, could hold a candle to Horatio Sands Live.
Really?
Because he was one of the originals. He was one of the original groups with Matt, whatever his face is.
Well, so he must have been, much better there than
he was
SNL.
before this year, yeah. But
Although his sketch with Janet Jackson, where they talk about soaking the corks, that is one of the funniest from that whole decade.
And I have a very soft spot in my heart for Carol. Do you remember Carol?
I do not.
Okay, well, it started off as a skit about it was Colin Farrell and Horatio Sands dressed up as this woman, Carol. And they're at a sex party, and they have to remember the safe words. It's a really funny skit, and he ended up doing Carol a couple times. I liked Carol.
I would probably trade most of these shows just for the sketch from Kids in the Hall where one of the secretaries switches the coffee for decaf and they all lose it. That is one of the funniest sketches, even after I've seen it like a dozen times. I love that sketch. So funny.
Kids in the Hall, did anybody see their live tour or either of their live tours?
I've been to all three that they've come through Orlando with.
I always thought that they couldn't top themselves from the show. And, there were some ups and downs during the 5 years that it was on the air. But, seeing them live, there was not 1 minute where I wasn't pissing my pants laughing.
Oh, yeah.
And,
did you see the most recent tour?
No, I missed it. And I haven't been able to see, a lot of their more recent stuff for the past couple of years, I would think. But,
well, they've only toured recently and then, 10 years ago. They had a long stretch, and the only thing they really did together during that time was the Death Comes to Town, which I think they only aired in Canada. I never saw it actually aired anywhere in the States except online.
I watched 3 or 4 episodes, and I love most of what they do, so even though it wasn't laugh out loud funny, I still enjoyed seeing everybody, revive their ability to play these weird sort of small town characters. It doesn't really, compare to the quality of the laughs from the actual Kids in the Hall series, but it's one of those things where it's like, I'll take what I can get when it comes to Kids in the Hall, like anything. I'm so thrilled to see, on Hannibal,
Scott Thompson.
Yeah, Scott Thompson has a recurring role as the forensic investigator.
And it's a total straight character. They don't play it for laughs, but he's still so great. And you get little glimpses of that devilish Scott Thompson, underneath. The live show this past year, they did the sketch where there's 2 couples and they're having like a dinner party, and one of them is just trying to like demonstrate how comfortable he is with everybody else. So he's like, I'm going to take off my pants. You wouldn't mind that, right? You know, we're all friends. And it kind of culminates with him having sex with, so I think let's see, was it Bruce? No, it's Scott Thompson having sex with, Kevin McDonald's as the wife of the friend, you know?
Yeah.
And then the punchline is, you know, the stupid, like, everybody's like, oh yeah, that's fine. And then I think it's not Bruce. Bruce isn't in it. It's God, I can't think of the names.
Foley.
Well, yeah, Foley's like, oh,
he's the other husband, I think.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He's like, I didn't even really like the vase you guys gave us, you know, or whatever. Like trying to admit something, you know, really personal that he's never admitted, and that breaks everybody's mood, and everybody's like, wait, what? Oh. So they did that live, and I mean, it got a little like, you know, I mean, obviously no one's really doing anything, but it got a little out of control at one point. Because like on the show, it gets kind of crazy, but like on the live show, I mean, they just go all out. It was great. And the my favorite thing, if you have the chance to see a live show, the way it ends is they kind of make fun of the fact, like they make fun of what each other is doing, and they have the guy who crushes heads with a video camera. And so he basically is kind of roasting each person one by one and sort of making fun of how pathetic their career is or whatever, you know. And then he turns it on himself, you know, because it's Mark, right? And he turns it on himself, and he's like, oh, and you weren't even on SNL for more than 2 years. And, you know, they ended that way. It was really great. If you have a chance to see them live, oh, my God, it's definitely worth it.
Have any of you guys ever heard of, it's a sketch thing that goes around. It's called Too Much Light Makes the Baby Go Blind.
I've heard of it, but I've never seen it.
If you ever get the chance, it is amazing. They do, absolutely. They do 30 plays in an hour is what they bill it as. And they have a clothesline hung up with the numbers 1 through 30. And each one, and every time you see it, it's totally different because each one of these numbers represents a skit. It could be anywhere from, 10 seconds long to 5 minutes long. And that nobody knows what order it's going to be in. So, and it is just absolutely amazing if you get a chance to see this.
It's come through our Fringe Festival, so I've wondered if it was like a national thing or...
Yeah, I saw it in Allentown, 10, 15 years ago, and it's something that it has actually stuck with me. I can think about it and laugh, just how that happened or that night. So if you get the chance, go see it.
I got a question since you mentioned live shows, and this goes to our boys in the South here. Are either of you seeing the Eric Idle John Cleese tour?
I want to.
Because that's the only market you guys that they're hitting. I mean, they're hitting Baltimore, but everything else is in the South. Really? I didn't realize that. Oh, I got to double check when the dates are, because the more I think about it, like that is such a once in a lifetime thing. Mm-hmm. I really should. October 16th and 17th in Orlando. Okay. Oh crap, that's Bear Bust. Invite them. Yeah. Really. Well, for a while we were trying to get Margaret Cho to come to Bear Bust, because there's another bear event in Orlando that's getting Bianca Del Rio. Mm-hmm. But Margaret's touring like all over the place at that point, and she just came to Orlando, so we're like, no. Mm-hmm. But I may still sneak out. Maybe I'll miss one of the nights and go check that out, because that's we mentioned those other comedy shows, but honestly, even before SNL or probably around the same time for me, it was Monty Python. It was like all of the seasons of Monty Python, watching on whatever channel it was on, or renting the videos or whatever it was. Like that was huge for me.
Yeah, I think Brian, I think we kind of grew up around the same era and probably saw the same stuff on PBS and or Comedy Central or whatever. But Monty Python, I remember my uncle, when I was 5 years old, was sitting there watching it in the living room, and just I was just hooked from that moment on. I was the naughty 10-year-old kid who kept showing Monty Python the Holy Grail around all the friends in the neighborhood. So
Oh my God. When I was in college, and I mean, I'm sure this is not a unique story, but seriously, in college and especially in marching band, yeah, Justin, you understand what I'm saying here. Everybody in the GD band would quote the Holy Grail, and you weren't worth your salt if you couldn't, respond with some stupid part of the movie. And I go back now and I watch the movie, and honestly, it's okay. It's not my favorite. Like, it's still memorable, but like now, Meaning of Life, maybe even like a little bit of Life of Brian.
Life of Brian. I want to go to the stoning.
Yes.
I can. No.
Yeah.
The Judeans People's Front. No, it's the People's Front of Judea.
And you think about the humor now, and that's what I love about certain things like that. You appreciate it when you're a kid for certain rhythms and certain things that are accessible, but you totally miss probably half of the material. Like my favorite example is like Golden Girls. You watch Golden Girls as an adult, and you go, "Oh my God, this show was so dirty."
Nanny, like the Nanny was like that too.
Oh, see, I haven't gone back and watched.
Oh my gosh! I mean, the things that you see, I mean, like, oh my God, how did they get that past the censors? I mean, It's just, yeah.
For me, and this isn't necessarily something naughty, but just that operated on such a different level, Bullwinkle.
Oh yeah.
If you ever watch Bullwinkle, I mean, you really should have at least a master's in literature to catch everything that goes on in there. Yeah.
So what I was gonna. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. No, the other question I was just gonna bring up, because with Steve had mentioned MTV's post-state attempts at humor and how bad some of them were, but there was one I had affinity for a little while, and this is somewhere I might have to especially bring in Matt on this. Tom Green.
Oh.
Really? Nobody?
I never appreciated it.
So I used to watch that when I was living with a bunch of roommates, and at first it really resonated with my circle of friends. We loved the sort of spontaneity of it, the way that this guy who really basically didn't have anything particularly unique in his skill set could like suddenly just get everybody's attention with his sort of style of doing crazy stuff on camera. And then it felt like within a year or two, I don't remember how quickly it happened, but everything that was working for Tom Green was working against Tom Green.
Right,
so everybody was just like, fed up with him and, didn't like what he was doing on the show. And I don't remember ever really being super annoyed with his celebrity. He was with Drew Barrymore for a while, and he was always sort of a likable, Canadian personality to me. But I only watched, a few episodes in the first season. I can't even really remember exactly what he was doing, but I sort of group it with Jackass a little bit. Like it was sort of like prank style, experimental, low budget stuff.
Well, you mentioned Jackass, and Jackass is definitely one of those shows that, has a much more lasting legacy. But looking at it now and seeing those original episodes now, it's lost the appeal, because of course there's that spontaneity that you mentioned with Tom Green, that after so many years of seeing these guys completely punish themselves and each other, doing stupid shit, it kind of gets old. And it doesn't really have that lasting appeal, even though some of the things that we now see and take for granted, like on YouTube videos where people do stupid shit all the time and have, millions of followers, it really goes back to that type of show and that type of, kind of, I don't know, self-violence exhibition I'm not really sure, because I know Tom Green kind of did stuff like that.
Yeah, he did, but I think I think he was more rooted in I don't want to say traditional comedy, but it wasn't. There certainly was shock value, but I think in his own way he was kind of conforming to regular comedic tropes, where I think Jackass, took the shock level, a bit further.
Well, because Tom Green was all
Yeah.
about humiliation, whether of himself, his parents,
Yeah.
other people on the show. Jackass kind of took that humiliation and made it violent, and painful. So like you were laughing at people who were not just humiliated, but were like horribly injured or should have been like horribly injured.
I don't know.
Bam
I
Margera's parents.
Well,
I would have
okay.
killed him.
Well, Bam Margera's parents. There's actually a funny story there. My mother went to high school with his mom, so they knew each other, and they sort of reconnected at a high school reunion one year. And my mom had no idea. She had never heard of Jackass or, Can't Kill Yourself or any of those things that Bam Margera had done. So she was, talking with her, and she was like, "Oh yeah, my son has this show. It's really stupid. They do just like stupid pranks and stuff." And so my mom came back and she told me about this. She's like, "Oh, I ran into, I forget her name. I just remember Phil Margera because, well, hey, you can't forget Phil and all those images of Phil in nothing but his underwear all over that show." But, it's just one of those things where I guess from her perspective, she's like, whatever. He buys me a new house. I'm fine with that. Like he'll destroy something, but he'll repair it. But what we're seeing them do to their bodies is, I think, a little bit more shocking than what they're doing to property. And, I think it kind of took a downturn when that one, it was Ryan, I think, one of the performers ended up dying.
I was at that con. That
Oh,
he was
really?
driving, there was a Philadelphia Wizard World.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he basically, it was he was drunk driving or something. Like there was something involving drinking. I thought.
Oh yeah.
Which I mean, most of what they did, most of their stunts were on some kind of substance, but
Oh yeah.
But
had to be.
But I was really impressed with the way that they pulled off that show, because they had to have the illusion of high recklessness without actually having the production be out of control. And I think that's really impressive to me, because I mean they pulled off a highly successful TV series, multiple movies. I think I've seen just about everything that they did, and most of the stuff that they came up with is actually really clever. Like, how do you get really close to crossing that line but still keep everything from keep the cops from showing up and keep the participants from actually getting violent and stuff like that. There's a lot of really clever social experiment that's into each of the skits, but they dress it up like they're just horsing around all the time. But very few skits did I ever see where I thought they're not thinking about what they're doing here. They're just wasting our time. Most of the time it was they're doing something really super intimidating that pretty much nobody else would want to do, but they're doing it in a really fun way.
Well, I think that they kind of latched onto that in some of the sketch comedy and some of the other, shows that like to mock Jackass. And Mad TV did it several times. One with Kenny Rogers' Jackass, and the other time with Oprah's Jackass. And I think those two skits also kind of outlived the original humor or the original time that they actually aired. So you can go back and you can laugh at them because they're so ridiculous. But that kind of I think that kind of violent humor, it had a big burst of popularity, and there were a ton of shows that either spun off of that or tried to emulate that. And it just, right now, I don't think that people have the attention span to watch that anymore. And so that's why you see those 5-minute or 3-minute videos on YouTube all the time, where they're people doing the same kind of stupid stuff and usually getting horribly injured. But that's pretty much all it's worth, not long thought out and very well produced stunts where people really don't get completely horribly injured. But now people actually do, because it's if they're not really thinking it through, they're just trying to do something else that's more shocking.
Well, Brian was trying to get in earlier with something else, so what do you want to bring up, Brian?
I mean, another thing that I think it came up, we were talking about eating the Muppets. I wondered what you guys thought of the new Muppet TV show trailer that they've been releasing. The I guess the pitch video that they did, and then I haven't seen the most recent trailer, but just like, are you guys as big a Muppets fan as I am? Are you excited by this? Do you like it? What?
I'm way behind on the Muppets. I haven't seen either of the movies, of the two recent movies.
Oh, so I didn't see the second one. I heard mixed things, but I absolutely recommend. Did you? Okay. Well, I know Tina Fey was in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So I mean, you would think it would be pretty good. I heard some mixed things, but the first one, or the first of the more recent ones, what's his name from How I Met Your Mother? I want to say Peter Sagal, but that's not right.
Jason Segel.
Jason Segel. Like, he wrote, and it is like a love letter to the Muppets with some great music from the guys from Fly the Conchords, or at least one of the guys from Fly the Conchords, and it's really good. And then the new show, the new trailers look awesome. I mean, it definitely has a Modern Family sort of in that single camera style, of a comedy. But like, they take the idea of the Muppet Show and expand it to follow like the personal lives of all the Muppets. And they definitely want to showcase, at least from the trailer, a lot of the obscure Muppets too. So you're not just going to get, Piggy and Kermit and Fozzie. And although they had if they had a Fonzie Muppet, that'd be pretty awesome too. No,
I'm always hoping that they're going to include more Statler and Waldorf, because those are the only characters that like spoke to me as a child.
Really?
Yeah.
I love them.
Sourpuss, like reviewers up in the box, like hating on everything. That they gave me life skills for social media.
Nice.
Well, the great thing about Statler and Waldorf, they weren't like depressed. They were actually really happy.
Yeah.
They just found so much joy in putting everybody else down.
They were the mean girls before there were mean girls.
Exactly.
But at the same token, they were back every week.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's because they were.
Why do we always come here? I guess we'll never know. It's like a form of torture to have to watch a show.
Yep.
I mean, the Muppets are one of those, again, we were talking about this earlier with Golden Girls and The Nanny. They're one of those shows that as a kid, you definitely get a certain level of the humor. But again, as an adult, you go back and you even listen to some of the lyrics of the songs, like Rainbow Connection. This floored me as an adult. I go back and I'm listening to Rainbow Connection, and this is like a couple years ago, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is a darker song than I ever gave it credit for. Like, not dark, really dark, but just there's an air of melancholy about the message and an air of like adultness. Like, you just don't get that as a kid at all. And I love that.
I thought there was like a really interesting precursor to that on Sesame Street. If you remember the song Imagination with Bert and Ernie.
Vaguely.
Anybody remember this?
No.
And that was the same thing where I look at the lyrics as a grown man, and I'm like, this was really deep to throw at 6-year-olds,
Even before that, you've got Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with Clarice singing "There's Always Tomorrow for Dreams to Come True." I mean, they're basically saying, hey, life sucks right now, maybe tomorrow will be a little bit better. I mean, that's a brutal song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. And like kids, I know this is going to sound like an old man, right? Kids today, I feel like they're coming up on these shows that are absolutely, and I say to a point, they're absolutely all saccharine, like nonsense. Like you just cannot even, like an adult cannot even watch Blue's Clues or I mean, that's a little older, but I don't even actually, I mean, other than like stuff on like, Adult Swim or Cartoon Network, even like just going by like Disney Channel.
Oh, Disney XD.
Apart from like Gravity Falls, like it's all just it's crap.
So
it's
dumbed
crap.
down. Everything's just so dumbed down. But I have to tell you, with having a bunch of friends that have kids that are of that age, the smart ones see through it.
Good.
And they jump off as soon as they realize, hey, this is, that you're talking down to me.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah, no. So there's smart kids out there.
Do you guys watch? Anybody watch Gravity Falls?
Nope.
Nope.
I've thought about it because of the costume that you wore to that con.
I'm telling you right now, the shows that I need to spend time with, and they're on my list. Gravity Falls is already there. I already keep up, and they just added a new character voiced by J.K. Simmons.
Oh, great!
Who I recently found out is a fraternity brother of ours. Like he was a musician,
really?
Nice.
and a music in my music fraternity, Phi Mu Alpha. Like that is awesome. But I mean, I've always loved his stuff, especially as in Spider-Man, all the Spider-Man movies that they did with Tobey Maguire, and in the Closer, the TNT cop. Whatever drama with Kira Sedgwick, like he's amazing. And then Stephen the Stupid Farmers Insurance or whatever. Farmers.
Going back to Oz. Oz. Oh my
That's
God,
another
brutal
show
on
I need
that
to go back and watch because I missed it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
But he's also
Him and Oz, it's
adorable
very
as
different.
he's also adorable as the dad in Juno. That's
Yes.
my favorite J.K. Simmons.
You're right. No. So he's good in everything. Like,
And I was used to seeing him, time and time again in theater in the '90s in New York. Whether
Really?
it was, I mean, he was in Guys and Dolls with Nathan Lane and just a bunch of things. I saw him on stage for years before I ever saw him on TV.
oh man, he's everywhere. The other things I will say, if you're not watching like Steven Universe and Adventure Time and Regular Show, like all of those are excellent. They're not really as like for young kids, but for like middle, high school, and all up, like they are sophisticated, referential, bizarre, amazing cartoons.
Regular Show I have a lot of affection for. Adventure Time does not connect with me at all.
Whoa! We cannot go into the I don't like Adventure Time zone. That show is sacred. That show
It doesn't
is like,
connect with me at all. Sorry.
my sister
Bill-
got me into that, and it's hilarious.
I've never
Bill,
seen
I will
it.
tell you, Bill, I totally agree with you 2 years ago when I watched it like the first time.
Mhm.
But when I went back and I forced myself to see a couple more episodes, that's when it really grabbed me. Like, it's sort of, it's not feast or famine, but there are episodes that will get you, and then you'll be in. So you have to kind of.
Bears.
Oh my god!
Now I have to say I did give it a chance.
No.
Maybe
and I did too,
maybe
and
I
I
will
didn't like it at
revisit it,
first.
but I did watch it and it just didn't work for me. One kid show going back to some of the more traditional Disney XDs that I always heard was very subversive in a way was iCarly.
Oh, I never watched.
Anybody
that.
ever watch that? Because apparently like Bendis throws iCarly references every so often. I guess because
Really?
he had the
I
young
don't-
daughter.
I don't know
that-
if it was subversive. I think it was more just basically teaching kids how to, make some money on the internet by videotaping themselves. But some of those Disney shows from the early 2000s, I think they more were basically just launching pads for the careers of the, little starlets and the musical stars of now. Like all those young girls who were, 12, 13, 14 on those shows are now the 20-year-olds who are licking donuts and saying they hate America or grinding on MTV. Like it's the same. That's how it's the Disney pop
It's
star
like-
creation machine.
Yeah, it's like the Mouseketeers. I mean, it's the same
Yeah,
thing.
I mean,
We
they did the
got,
same
like
thing in
Britney
the 90s.
Spears and
Yeah.
Justin Timberlake and Christina Aguilera. I mean, all of those. It's the same. It's the same machine, just
And I think that-
rebranded.
Yeah, I don't know, like, going back and watching some of those shows that these women, basically, it's mostly women. There are men, obviously, who have started their careers on some of these Disney shows, but, looking and seeing these young women, on these shows, I don't know if I could see it as potentially harboring some subversive writing or, acting. It actually looks like the opposite. It's like the super saccharine. There's nothing really bad that can ever happen. Everything's really super, which, if you watch like old episodes of Hannah Montana, there's nothing there's no, risk, there's no worry, there's no anything. Everything always turns out okay. Whereas in something like a Steven Universe, there's that feeling that maybe things won't always be okay. And I think that's kind of where, shows like that, like some of these interesting cartoons that are coming out now that are a little bit more than just random nonsense.
Yeah.
That are also fun to watch. Like the random nonsense can be fun.
The first time I felt that, where you mentioned like with Steven Universe that not everything might be okay. The first time I really felt that with a modern cartoon was Samurai Jack.
Oh yeah.
Because there was plenty of time. There were plenty of times
Yep.
Samurai Jack lost.
Oh yeah.
And those are some of the more interesting episodes.
Samurai Jack is the only cartoon I have on DVD.
You really?
Oh,
Yep.
I don't want to go there.
Yeah.
I also really enjoyed the comic book series that IDW did for Samurai Jack. Somebody special ordered it into my local comic book shop, and then they didn't come and pick it up, and so he had this like stack of Samurai Jack comics, and I was like, what is that? And I scooped them all up, and they're all really, really cool. The art style is more like the movement of Samurai Jack than the still frames of Samurai Jack, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I get you.
The one frustrating thing about that IDW license is we only got one shot for Foster's Home.
Oh,
I loved Foster's Home.
I never watched it.
Oh, do yourself a favor. If you can find the episode where Coco becomes a singing star, that is 24 minutes of pure joy.
Really?
Yes. That's actually a series, sometimes when you say, the first episode isn't really indicative of most of the show.
Right.
You can think of that. If you see the original the original pilot, which is like 90 minutes, and I think the first season is readily still out there. I think for the remaining seasons you have to go to Warner Archives. It's pretty good. They kind of had a very refined vision of what this show was going to be like from the outset. And there are characters that can drive you crazy, like I don't want to get into it in case you resonate with some of them, but I love Foster's Home, and and Powerpuff Girls didn't do anything for me.
Oh, I love Powerpuff Girls.
But-
Can't wait till the new comes out.
I'm hopeful but scared.
Yeah. Now McCracken, he's not involved with this, right?
Who?
The creator of Powerpuff Girls and the creator of co-creator
Dexter's little
of
Tarakovsky?
Tartakovsky.
Mm,
Jenny.
Yeah,
Tartakovsky.
Gendy Tarakovsky? Or who are you talking about?
I was talking about McCracken.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
McCracken's in there. Yeah, I forgot about him. I don't know. That's a good question. Did you guys ever watch, oh, shoot. It's not Attack on Titan, but there was another, it was an American cartoon, and it was about these three teenagers or two teenagers and a robot from another planet that formed.
Is that Ben 10?
Not Ben 10. Oh man, I gotta look it up now. For the longest time, it was on Cartoon Network, and I think it was like 2 seasons, and it was Tarakovsky's like follow up to Samurai Jack, and God, it was a great show, and it didn't do well enough. I think there was problems with marketing and toys and all that, and I'll have to look it up.
Was it the Secret Saturdays?
No, that wasn't it. Crap, I'll look it up. But no, seriously, it's one of those. It's something about Titan, and it was just so good. And then he left.
Symbionic Titan.
There it is. There
you go.
Highly recommended. I don't even know if you can get them on DVD, but if there's any way to find them on the internets, they keep trying to get him to come back and do it. And he said like he would love to come back and like sort of finish the story. But man, so good. Such a good show.
It says here all 20 episodes are available on iTunes. It has never been released on DVD or Blu-ray.
I gotta use an Apple product. Ugh.
I laugh while I'm on my Mac Mini, surrounded by my other Mac Mini and my iPhone from work.
See, I'm using a Mac right now to do this, so I can't say much. But it's not mine; it's Pat's.
So then it's okay. It's forgivable, right?
Exactly. It's not.
I sold an Apple years ago, so I'm okay with it.
I take whatever the company gives me. I'm sorry.
Right?
I don't
No.
care. I don't care.
At least
My
the company
phones and
gives you a
tablets.
phone.
Yeah, my phones and tablets will always be Androids. I just can't. I can't really work with iOS. I don't like it. I have it for my work. That's about it.
No, sir, I don't like it. It reminds me of the horse guy from Ren and Stimpy.
Ah, yes.
Another great cartoon that, again, works on so many levels and got away with a lot of crap that you would never in a more polite company. Especially when it came back on MTV.
Well, when it came back, it was actually specifically touted as being more adult.
Oh my God! There's like a clip they play on.
The pitcher and catcher.
Yes, Jesus God.
Are you a pitcher or a catcher? Well, I'm a catcher. Like, it's just.
I would love to interview Chris Faluzzi. I think he would be an amazing or total asshole. I don't know which, but I think it would be entertaining either way.
Bob Camp was at the convention I was at on Saturday.
Really?
He's a Jersey guy, yeah.
Is he doing anything now, like recent?
Not that I know of.
He was, he's so funny, and he has such great voices. Like that makes me sad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I met the guy, and I can't think of his name. He played Zorak on Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Mm-hmm.
He was at Heroes. I don't know, Steve, if you saw him while you were there. And he is not doing anything. Like, he did so much for early Adult Swim. I think the last thing he did was he did some stuff for Aqua Teen. But, man, he's like hard-pressed for work. Mm-hmm. And it's just sad because he was so damn funny. And he's an animator, so, like, you know, he was selling his design work and all his sketches and stuff. Like classic Space Ghost and Aqua Teen stuff. And that's how he's making his living right now.
No, it's a shame.
And
you think of an area like voice work, would you kind of be trend proof in a sense?
You get pigeonholed, though. It's like anything else in acting.
Be,
you know,
yeah.
people just kind of. George Lowe is the same way for Space Ghost. Like the last time some of the Nerdy Show guys saw him at a show, they actually involved him in a bit, and it was this whole thing. But he was kind of like he's not doing much, and it sucks. Even Chapman, Homestar Runner, we were talking to him at Heroes, and it's not like he's doing stuff. Like he's not like the other guys. I mean, he was writing, I guess, and doing voiceover stuff for Gravity Falls. But like, again, it's just like these luminaries, these people that we were so into 10 years ago, like they're really struggling. And it's like, man, you guys should be living large. You should be doing some cool stuff. Like, you know, that Hollywood is that, or that these niche whatevers are that fickle. It's scary. Like you think, wow, you know, we do our thing. But, you know, we kind of have our other gigs. We do our other stuff. It's not like we're worried about, you know, that drying up. But when you give your all and you get something really successful, that it can just stop one day and then you're screwed, like career-wise. Ugh.
When you mentioned Homestar Runner, I don't think I possess the vocabulary to tell you guys how much I love Trogdor.
Nice.
Oh, my God. That was, you know that every once in a while you hit something and then it's just on a loop the entire day.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. And
we would play that like the video game version, like just, you know, there was like a little game they put out, like a Flash game. And my lab of all these programmers, like that's all we would play is sit there and we'd be like, Trogdor!
Oh my God, I just can't tell you the first day when we discovered it, how many times we said, thatch roof cottages! Burninating the countryside.
Oh my God.
Burninating all the peoples.
He was selling the little Homestar Runner figurines in a box. So I have
like
a
Strong
box.
Bad and all that, and
the whole crew.
Oh,
and so
God.
Not only do I have these little figurines up on my cubicle at work, where thank God enough of us are still around that we know what it is, but he signed the box and he sketched Homestar on it, and so like the box is sitting there. It's just it was so cool to see him, and the fact that he's done stuff for Gravity Falls, which is like my favorite cartoon now, like a modern thing.
Mm-hmm.
It just blew my mind because I had no idea. And the guy that created Gravity Falls like saw like Homestar and Strong Bad in high school, and like was so impressed. He hired him. Like that's awesome. Like that was so awesome. Like so cool to see that lineage, But then you feel old because you're realizing that it's like 10 years ago. And
You feel shut the hell up.
listen,
Shut up.
we're all getting there. Okay, I know you're a
I'm
little
getting there
further ahead
faster
of me.
than any of you.
I'm just saying I can understand. I feel you and more each day. Do I feel the Grim Reaper coming for me?
Okay. So I saw U2 last Thursday. I saw U2 in concert last Thursday.
Yep.
And I did the math, and I've been seeing U2 live. I've seen them on every tour that's hit the States. And that means 32 years worth of concerts.
Woo!
So I am working on the project I'm working on now. There is somebody who wasn't even alive the first time I saw U2 live.
I hate those moments.
Yeah.
God.
I wish I would have been in New York last weekend, because there was U2 playing, and then there was Styx and Def Leppard playing. I would have loved to see either one of those concerts.
Oh, okay.
Come on, Styx is awesome.
I've actually seen Def Leppard in concert. They're pretty fun.
Yeah.
Do you want to hear my Def Leppard story?
No. The drummer from Def Leppard only got one arm.
Because this is a really cool story. Okay. When I was in high school, my friend won tickets to see Billy Squier with Def Leppard opening. So we went to see the show, and the whole one of the prizes was one of these things that was talking about it was a radio station contest, and one of the elements of the prize was you got to meet Billy Squier during the intermission, and Billy Squier was obviously had a huge ego, and it's like I don't want to bother with those motherfuckers. We were 14 years old, okay? And Joe Elliott and Phil Collin, who was the guitarist for Def Leppard, one of the two guitarists for Def Leppard, the one that's still alive, from the Pyromania lineup, saw this going on and came and introduced themselves and signed stuff, and they were really cool. So
that's cool.
Yeah, so I do have a soft spot for Def Leppard. Personally, the music's shit, but so.
Well, it's not my favorite group, but I think that would have been a fun concert to go to.
If I was smashed, maybe.
Well, yeah, you'd have to be smashed.
But that's not my that's not my 80s. My 80s is something different.
Well, I'd
Whitesnake?
kill to see NXS again.
Well, you know what? Before Whitesnake got really sanitized, the album they put out before the one that got popular that was self-titled.
Slide It In.
Yeah, I mean there's some great vocals on it. When Whitesnake was a much more pure metal blues band, there's some stuff I actually really like. When they got polished, it was.
Whitesnake was a metal blues band?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. No,
David, go back and check that out.
David Coverdale replaced Ian Gillan in Deep Purple.
Oh,
so he was the singer in Deep Purple, and then when Deep Purple fell apart, after Ritchie Blackmore left, they had a guitarist, Tommy Bolin, and it kind of brought a bit more funk into it. David Coverdale's first post Def Leppard band was Whitesnake.
Wow, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, the early Whitesnake, and when they became very polished in the late 80s, there's not a lot of correlation. And I love metal from the late 70s and early 80s, like Nawabum. It's such a ridiculous tag, but I love that stuff. But as things progressed in the 80s and and I think that was across the board. I don't want to just say it was metal, with the influence of hair metal and stuff, but a lot of genres gradually got tamer,
Mm-hmm.
And
Well, I don't know if they were tamer. They just got boring. I mean, they all sort of started to sound the same. The subject matter was always the same. You knew what you were going to get.
It was the same Lynn and synth drums in the back.
Yeah.
And the production techniques were very similar. And I don't, there was a lot of great music between 85 and 89, but not a lot of it was above ground. Yeah, for me.
See, I go back not to that era, but the 70s, and I'm all prog rock. That's all I cared about. I didn't even touch anything else.
Uh-huh.
It was
Nothing but Mothers of Invention.
Oh God,
Captain Beefheart.
Zappa, not Earth, Wind and Fire, Electric Light Orchestra. Well, Electric Light, that wasn't really it. But no, what's oh crap, I can't think of it now. Emerson, Lake and Palmer.
Mm-hmm.
Even flute guy. What's his name?
Jethro Tull.
Jethro Tull. Like Mike
guy.
Oldfield. Yeah, flute guy. I know. Those are my go-tos. I couldn't do metal. I couldn't even do punk. I tried.
Yeah. For me, it was like my favorite music, hands down. If I had to say like a favorite time period, is basically anything that came out of England between 76 and 79. Punk into post-punk.
Mm-hmm.
I love that stuff, and I know it inside out.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, and you kind of mentioned it when the hair metal bands started taking over in the mid '80s. It was, I think, about that time that I think it was Euro metal that started really taking the baton, so to speak. That's when you start seeing those bands like Pretty Maids, Scorpion, not Scorpion, Queensryche. Well,
Queensryche predate that though.
Yeah. There was some other bands that started showing up.
I think Queensryche don't. At least the stuff like Operation Mindcrime, it's not a huge puddle jump from that stuff to what they were doing then.
Yeah.
And if you want drama, look at the history of Queensryche in the last 5 years. Oh, baby, that is some good reading. It's
the inspiration for the new Empire show just kind of changed to...
Oh, Lord.
Yeah. Well, that was a weird time for metal, too, because, you had... there wasn't... if you were young and going heavy, there was other labels that would probably be assigned to you at that time,
Well, what's really strange, like I want to say it's the late '90s, early 2000s. Dee Snider had a radio show. It was a talk show. It was kind of like Howard Stern did in the '90s before he took the jump to satellite radio.
Mm-hmm.
But Dee Snider had this it was just a morning radio show in Connecticut, of all places. And I used to, listen to it on the way to and from, work in the morning, or listen to it at my morning job. And it was just really interesting because he would start telling these stories about people that he knew in the 80s. And it was almost like a who's who of a child's experience of celebrity in the 80s. So one of his best friends was, of course, Hulk Hogan. He would go and talk about like how he and Hulk and his, Terry, I guess, and their families would just hang out and have play dates and all that stuff. And it was just really strange hearing these, wild images that we had as kids, or those of us who were kids in the 80s, had of like these celebrities that were larger than life and just crazy, and you just pictured them as being wild and whatever. And here they are talking about carpooling and soccer for their kids,
racism, and
yeah.
In all fairness, he did say he was a little racist before he said it. He did own it in some way. Yeah.
Do you guys? I have to ask. Okay, so we've gotten into this a little bit here on this show, and I know in Flame On we dug into this. Like, do you feel like these people, these celebrities who, and admittedly, what Hogan said was pretty bad, but like, do you have sympathy for them with all of the shit they get, like with all of the downfall, given that a lot of times it's a temporary thing and a lot of them find a way back to redemption, but like, do you feel like that there is this sort of just total lack of, we're all human, we all say stupid things, these people just are very public, and so they're held to a higher standard than they really should be, because they're just, wrecks of people who crave attention and make their money off their image. Like, I'm torn because I absolutely hate reading and hearing the things they say, but I'm also like, I feel really like, what if that were me? What if I said something totally wrong and totally bad, and it just totally ruined my career? Like, I don't know how to feel. I'm so torn between the two sides.
I'm with you on that, because God knows I have said a lot of things that, I probably shouldn't have. Who am I to judge anybody for what they say 20 years ago? And
right.
I don't think it's right for people to come down quite as hard on stuff. I agree with you, Brian. I think that we just need to look at the problem, say, okay, hey, he can say, look, I did say this. This is a different time. I apologize. I'm not the same person, and we should just let it go. It would be different if he's going around in blackface, mocking. It'd be totally different. But he's not. And I just think that people as a society are just looking for the next downfall of someone.
I don't know. I think the Civil War, like Marvel Comics, line is drawn here between people like me who feel like those kinds of public statements are deal breakers. Like, I cannot look the same way at certain celebrities when I see this side of them. I just think, like, how can you be a rational adult and have those kinds of views, and not be, a bigger person? It's just really hard for me to chalk it up to just like a problem with the context of their comment. It's tough.
Can I throw out a historical from classical music? This is what I always go to. Tchaikovsky. If you read his biography, the man was a homosexual in an era of Russia that he could not be a homosexual. It was 1800s, right? And he did, by all accounts, and this is where it's propaganda versus, there was no YouTube, there was no, people weren't recording him, but by all accounts, he did some awful things. Like, he, raped bums and took advantage of young boys. Like, he did things that we would now, in this day and age, and even then, find reprehensible and outright, like, he would be a pariah. But we all listened to the 1812 overture. Sorry, brain fart. And like, we would absolutely, like, still listen to it and enjoy it, and Swan Lake and all of his things. So, like, I guess where I'm coming from with all this is, how much of the reaction do we have because we have such direct access to people's foibles and private lives, because it's so fascinating, because we have such connection now versus 100 years ago, when you would get some of this in the gossip papers and the yellow journalism, you would get some of this in the propaganda, but a lot of it you wouldn't get until years later. Like, I kind of want to have a universal standard, and it's hard for me to even like watch a Bill Cosby sketch from way back, or like Picture Pages or Cosby Show or whatever, and not think, oh God, this guy was taking advantage of women with Quaaludes. Like, it's really a mixed thing for me, because I feel like Matt, like, I feel the same way, where it's like, I don't want to, like Orson Scott Card, another great example. I don't want to read Ender's Game. I don't even want to watch the movie, and I haven't, because I am so upset with his view of homosexuality and his intolerance. But at the same time, I love those books. And I have like signed copies that when I met him years ago, and I don't want to get rid of those because I really feel like they are still special. So like, I'm just so torn. And when every new scandal erupts, especially in the gay community with like RuPaul and recently with Airboy with James Robinson, I'm just like, I go back and forth. Like, I absolutely want to support these people who I feel otherwise are amazing creators and talents and sympathetic to the community, and then go, look, these guys had a bad day, or they made a bad decision. So I'm so
I feel
torn.
I feel like those are different situations, because the situation with RuPaul is that we know that he's a celebrity who deeply cares about the people that he has sort of, accidentally said the wrong thing about, versus somebody who's been caught basically hating somebody, right? And, the jig is up, and, you've just been caught being hateful. And I think those situations where somebody like says the wrong word and they get, caught in a situation where it's like, oh, you picked the wrong, term to use in public. That's a really different situation from when somebody, is openly carrying a grudge against a group of people that's unjustified. And I was going to say, on the Orson Scott Card thing, I don't think there's anything wrong with reading his books and enjoying his work. But when it comes to buying into the celebrity of that person, or buying into the celebrity of Hulk Hogan or Paula Deen or any of these other people, like, that's where I feel like I draw the line. Like, yes, bad people make good art and literature and music, but, I don't know anything about the context of Tchaikovsky when I listen to Tchaikovsky. And now I'm probably going to think of like horrible stuff.
Well, right. I mean, and he's not the only one.
I'm not
either.
wearing like a t-shirt with Tchaikovsky's face on it, So I think there's a slightly different experience with recent celebrities where we're as much buying into their personality and their life as we are their work. And, so yeah.
Well, because we are more involved with their lives thanks to social media. I mean, we get to see them every day. We get to, where, nobody, we have a worldwide view where, back then people in the United States aren't really going to care about Tchaikovsky's, raping bums. But, I think that especially in the case of RuPaul, we're almost like, people are like just dying to eat your young or whatever. I mean, it's just like, these people who have done so much for others. Like, I mean, Hulk Hogan is amazing for Make-A-Wish Foundation. I mean, the man has given back to charity. I mean, so much, and he's given back to the community so much. And yeah, he got mad. He said some things he shouldn't have, but now we're going to just totally ostracize him. And that's not right.
I apply my grandmother's test. This is I'll even say the nanny test. My grandmother's name was Flory, but I called her Nanny. Okay, so like the thing with my grandmother, and to some extent my mom, who's still alive, and I apologize if for some reason she ever hears this, I'm going to totally throw her under the bus here. Like, I have heard so much negativity towards black people from both of them. And not at a personal, like, I know them, they're awful people level, but at that base racial Southern reactionary thing. Because my family's from Alabama, my mother's side. So, like, that is culturally acceptable, especially to my grandmother, but then by proxy to my mom. And it really wasn't until I came along, and I'm not saying this because I feel like I'm special, but it really generationally became unacceptable for me to carry that forward and think in those terms, because, even though I had that sort of as a background thing, I also had other forces pulling me away. But at the same time, I talk about the grandma test as, listen, my grandmother was an amazing woman. She did years of service for the church, for the community, for my family. I mean, she would give you the shirt off her back. She accepted my first partner without sight unseen when I came out. Like, I don't think she was a bad person, but I do feel like her racism was unacceptable. But, it was one of those things where I went, I have to take the good with the bad. And even though, they're related to me, so I don't have a lot of choice, I absolutely think back and go, she was an amazing woman in spite of her racism. And it's one of those things with generationally, Hulk Hogan, who's he's in the 60s maybe. Like, he's my mom's age.
Yep.
And generationally, I don't know his background, if he came from the South or where he came from, but by God, that's far more common than you might expect, and it's not excusable. I'm not saying this is an get out of jail free card, but it explains it to me, and I have a harder time coming down on somebody for saying those things. They're awful, but I can't bring myself to the level of ardor. And Matt, not you as much, but like, let's say with Tumblr or with Facebook or whatever, like I can't bring myself to that point where I go, this is an awful person. I will never, ever bother with them again. Because again, I've had people in my life that have been near and dear to me and have had those awful things they've said. So it's a weird situation, especially for those of us in that culture with that history to have to deal with. You know what I mean? It's just
Brian,
it's
I am with you. I had never, where I live, the 5 years before me and the 5 years after, there were no other races except for the Hindu family who, and this is not being racist at all, that ran the motel in town. That's how we grew up. When I moved down to Florida, I was stunned on just how
Florida.
Yeah, and I know it's worse in other places. But I'm just saying that was the first time I'd ever ran into that kind of mentality. And it's not that these people are evil. It's not that, it's these good people who are making bad choice or bad decisions or bad, so I understand what you're talking about. It resonates with me because that's why I try to look at things, in the big picture. What do these people do with their lives that counts? Not necessarily something that was recorded off, without their knowledge 10 years ago in a, fit of in fit of anger.
Right.
I've called many people a faggot in being in a fight with people,
Right.
I've done it. And I know a lot of people have too. So, I don't judge.
It's tough though, because again, we want to, and someone posted this on Facebook. They're like, we're not outraged. We're just trying to elevate the conversation or something to that extent. And I get that. Like I totally live my life by the sort of do no harm, elevate, don't denigrate, I absolutely get that. And I want to be that, but I also then turn around and go, hey, you social outrage warriors, you need to take a step back and just chill, be outraged, be upset, work on changing hearts and minds, but know how you're doing it and be aware that you can come off and actually be counterproductive. Like when you come off as a strident, holier than thou person. Like this was my church when I grew up in the Baptist church. Like they had, for lack of good intentions. They wanted the world to be a better place. But they came off as pricks, and they still do. A lot of social conservatives, I absolutely understand sort of where they're coming from, but they come off as just assholes. And you go, God, you realize that, Jesus came around and said, get into your closet and pray. Go and lead your life as an example for others. Don't go out there and be a judgmental Pharisee, like all of this factors into what I think when I see this stuff. And I just, it really tears me like totally in half. And I try to be like sympathetic, but then we got into it in Flame On, and Oral's going after me. And cause I'm Mr. White Man Privilege. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be white man privilege. I absolutely don't, because I don't really feel like as a gay man, especially the way I grew up, that's really the case. But at the same time, obviously I've had social advantages and things in my life. And, like even the way I treat my African-American friends and my trans friends, like I don't want to treat them unfairly or with that white man privilege. Like I want to get their perspective. And it's so tough. I really feel like it is so tough right now to do the right thing and yet be true and be honest, And every time I post anything on social media, I'm just like paranoid.
Who's going to yell at me now?
I'm going to step in something. I don't even care about people yelling at me as much as I care about the people in my life and the people that I know that I respect coming at me and saying, man, that's not cool. And then, the side effects. I don't know. It's an interesting era that we're in. The social media thing is amazing and just so awful and scary and terrible at times. Ugh.
Lately it's revolting to me. I just can't handle the. So a friend of mine posted a comment about gun control, and I started to read through the comments, and I was like, oh, I just cannot handle. I cannot handle the views on this topic. Like, yeah, I don't want to sound like I would invalidate one side or the other, but you know, because there are a lot of intelligent people on both sides, but it's just really like. It freaks me out. I walk down the street assuming that there aren't a lot of guns around me, and they're probably. I mean, I remember.
You're in Canada. That's probably true.
Well, I don't know, because I remember. I think it was a part of a Michael Moore documentary where he was talking about like the commonality of guns in Canada is really high because of, you know, I don't know, hunting and stuff like that. But I just, like, the visibility is not there. I never see anybody carrying. I don't walk into somebody's house and they have, like, a, you know, a rifle case on the wall or anything like that. So I kind of live in this, like, comfortable, protective bubble where I think the guns are, like, a mile away in all directions. And so when I see those discussions and I see people both passionate about being able to arm themselves and also other people feeling like, you know, it's the cause of some really, really horrific crime. It's just really tough to see that stuff. And I'm a strongly opinionated person, but when it comes to social, I'm pretty timid about like sharing my views, partially because I'm starting to think that it just doesn't really contribute to anything out there in the world. Like, it's just like, you know, a million people just shouting like me all at the same time, and we're not really creating any kind of like organized consensus. We're not like moving towards, you know, discovering a better way to think about stuff. We're just sort of like, I don't know, sometimes it's very discouraging to see, you know, the state of social media.
I mean, you're echoing exactly where I feel like where I'm at, and I am like, that's my goal. Is I want to build consensus. I want to find, from my Republican friends, my Democrat friends, from my conservatives, liberals, I want to find where is the middle ground, where can we find consensus, and how can we build that. And you're right. It's like the extremes on both sides just are amplified over and over again, so that you just can't find any common goal, and they demonize each other so willingly, both sides, you know, and it's only, and what I've found, it's only by having people on your Facebook, people on your social media, people in person who are conservative, who are not your perspective, and constantly being confronted with that and having to deal with the reality that other people exist, that you can ever find a balance, that you can ever find that happy median. You know what I mean? Like, I'm so thankful. I have my coworker, he sits right next to me. He's a huge conservative, but he's not a social conservative as much. I mean, he's more of like just fiscal, whatever. But like, even socially, like, he tells me, he's like, you know, you're like my closest gay friend. If I didn't know you, I don't know that I would have the same view on homosexuals and gay marriage and all of this. Like, we've learned from each other so much, their various perspectives, that like that I see is what the whole world needs. And you get certain people in their little bubbles, whether it's, you know, their friends, their colleagues, or the people online, and it just reinforces their viewpoint to the exclusion of anything else, that they can become so strident and so, you know, narrow-minded. And you know, you don't like thinking as a liberal, you know, you're narrow-minded, but narrow-mindedness can happen in any philosophy, in any direction, if you only have that echo chamber, that bubble around you, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I really feel like everybody needs a friend who is like completely philosophically opposed to most of what they believe in, and that they keep and maintain that friendship and that relationship, and have to like force themselves to, even if it pulls them to the middle or it pulls the other person in the middle, like it has to be there in your life for balance, you know?
Well, if anything else, it teaches you the art of compromise and,
Yep.
that you can coexist with people that you don't agree with. And that's probably the most useful skill any of us can learn.
Amen.
It's interesting listening to everybody, and I am one of those people that I hate conflict. And one of the things that I've noticed a lot with the advent of social media, so maybe as recently as 2005, but even further back, maybe in the early 2000s, late 90s, when the internet started becoming huge, and people could have their opinions heard everywhere. It became, Matt, I think you mentioned this, just sort of like a million people shouting what they were thinking without listening to anybody else. And, so empathy is pretty much the biggest thing that seems to be missing from a lot of, social justice warriors out there that are making their voices the loudest. But I think one of the interesting things when you're looking at these huge hot button issues, these giant social problems or, black holes of discussion, there really isn't a point where everyone can agree. If you have somebody who's more conservative and somebody who's more liberal talking about an issue like gun control, the goal is pretty much the same for both of them. Nobody wants to see kids get gunned down or people get shot in a movie theater. Nobody wants to see that. That is not the goal for either party. But the philosophies behind how they approach that goal are completely different. And I think, when you have people on both sides of that quote-unquote debate, and it is a debate, even if it's not done very intelligently most of the time, they may have the same goal in mind. Nobody wants to see, a lot of people getting shot by cops. Nobody wants to see, half of a planet get blown up by nuclear missiles. Nobody wants to see Donald Trump's toupee all the time. But, these are all kind of things where you're going to have to disagree. And it kind of frustrates people like myself and Brian and Matt. I think it frustrates you too, that you really can't see those compromises. And it's really difficult to kind of figure out, well, where can I sit on this debate? I know kind of what the other side is thinking because, like some people who probably aren't the ones that we're seeing in these conversations, or I guess standing on two sides of a fence shouting at each other, we have some empathy for both sides. But
I don't. I have to say I don't. I've tried to find it.
Yeah.
When it comes to the gun control issue.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
The notion of a shooting a month in high schools in the United States is an acceptable loss. I can't reconcile that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, see, that's
I just
the thing.
can't reconcile that.
It's not, and I don't think anybody, on the, NRA is God kind of that side really believes that's acceptable.
But
then
you know
why,
what? I
then
think
why
you're
do
wrong.
well, I believe that they don't believe it, but look at their actions.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Well, that's
Look at their actions, and almost more importantly, look at their inactions.
Well, I think that is the biggest thing. Like, the philosophies are so different, and I personally don't want to see more school shootings, and I would prefer more gun control. But from their minds, if you take it from their perspective, it's that gun control that's causing part of that problem, that lack of ability to make people accountable, and make people have the ability to defend themselves. They're not thinking in terms of, well, should I have little kids all trained with firearms sitting in the classroom with an eye on the door and an eye on the window, and their fingers on the trigger? Like, I don't think that's what's going through their head. But because the debates are being framed as just someone is 100% wrong and someone is 100% right, that it's causing that lack of understanding on both sides, but also unable to meet some kind of compromise. And I don't think a compromise really is possible. You're either going to have to put your foot down and have stronger gun control, or not have stronger gun control and put up with more shootings and then have the debate start over. And I don't think gun control is going to solve the shooting problem. I think there's going to be there's really, and that's just one debate.
You know what it comes down to, in my opinion, and I come from a Southern Baptist conservative background. That was my church for 16 of my formative years. I think honestly the problem in many parts of the world right now, it comes down to fundamentalists versus hybrid pragmatists, people who do not believe that there is like one literal right interpretation, but rather there's room for compromise, there's room for debate, there's room for healthy disagreement. And I have friends that are absolute like gun-toting NRA care hard. They're like the Charlton Hestons, in my life. And I look at them and I just go, you know what, man? Like, I totally don't want you to have to give up your guns because I feel like you are responsible. But that does not mean that everybody is as equally responsible as you. And therefore, you can't have a one-size-fits-all solution. You have to have more agency of a government or of an organization of some kind to police and sort of guard against those things. I mean, when you have in some states more of a rigorous process to get a driver's license than a gun license, it's like, how does that make sense? Because yes, a car is a deadly vehicle or a deadly implement when you want it to be. But I'll tell you right now, a gun is a far more deadly, far more readily usable implement to do harm than a car. Like, yeah. I have a hard time sympathizing with any, and I mean liberal and conservative, fundamentalist, or what I would call not even extremist, because that's sort of a charged term, but anybody who is so philosophically one side that they exclude from their worldview the possibility that A, they are wrong, or that B, there is any kind of compromise possible. And again, that comes back to the liberal community when they, and I hate to use this word because it's a charged word, but thought police, when they suppress any kind of, there was a thing recently about Scotland, and this could be a total tempest in a teapot, and I think they even reversed course. But the fact that they banned drag queens from a Scottish like gay pride parade because they were worried that the drag queens would be offensive, I'm like, when I grew up as a young gay man, what I was taught was to develop a thicker skin. I mean, I was in a fraternity, albeit a music fraternity, and I had people call me all kinds of names. And guess what? I'm doing just fine. I've survived. And any good drag queen will tell you that growing up in their various communities, they had to develop a thick skin too, because that's just the world they were in. Like, so it cuts both ways, that this sort of my way or the highway. You have to compromise. You have to have a thick skin. You have to be able to put things in a greater context to survive and thrive in this world without becoming strident and unmovable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, again, it goes back to the lack of empathy. I mean, there's no real understanding there without empathy. But, yeah, I mean, I'm hearing some interesting sounds coming from your mic there. I'm hoping it's the
I
dog.
apologize. That is Havoc. I decided, and I didn't know how loud he was. Like, he is sitting here literally wrestling with my right arm. And instead of putting him up and hearing him whine, I'm trying to keep him at bay. No. But I guess I'm getting excited. He's seeing me get excited and getting excited too. It's a whole feedback thing. It's just
it's adorable is what it is, which is
he
really
is a mess. He is a hot mess, by the way.
Yeah, whereas my dog is just basically sleeping on the couch behind me.
God, I wish I had that. I mean, I kind of miss those days, to be quite honest.
Yeah, see, I have Jiggy curled up right by my crotch, so that's where she's at.
Keeping you warm, keeping the boys warm.
Yeah, it's my baby girl.
I think I'm the only one without a pet right now.
No, I don't have a pet.
You don't have a pet right now?
No.
No. We lost our 3 cats within 7 months of each other.
Oh, God.
Well, I did something right, because at the time they took their bows, they were 20 years old, 18, and 18.
Good.
So
Good.
I did something right there, but I've been dealing with having a pet since 1974, and I got to the point, I'm pretty sure Rob wouldn't mind having something around the house, but it's so hard for me to say goodbye. And it's always you, the one doing it.
Oh, Bill, totally understand.
And I can't put myself through that. I don't want to love anything. I think I'll eventually change course on this, because after a point you're like, you miss the little pitter patter of feet around the house.
Sure.
But where I am right now, it's I just can't take the pain of that particular goodbye anymore.
I mean, I had 3 Pekingese, and 2, or 1 is still with me. Well, 1 is with my ex, but like within the space of a year, and which is a little bit longer. But I mean, it was awful. It was just awful. Ugh.
Honestly, last night when we came home, we actually went straight to the vet, because I did not put this out. Squirty, our little 4-year-old or 4-pound Chihuahua, she started choking the night before on her pill, and what happened was that stress caused her heart to go into overdrive, which caused her to get fluid in her lungs. And the vet wanted to euthanize her last night, and Andy was like, no. And he's like, I will fix this. I'll take care of it. And if she is going to die, she's going to die at home with her family. And the vet made him sign all these papers saying, she's not to blame and things like that. But we lost Elsie, we lost Hildy in the past year. I'm with you, Bill. I get almost panicked thinking, what's next? And we have Ace, who's 19. I mean, it's I'm with you. I don't particularly want any more animals after this.
If you ever want to see true love, go to a pet cemetery and read the inscriptions on the graves.
We have ours cremated, and we have them in
places,
and I mean, Andy even has ceramic ones that look like the animals.
But I'll tell you, to go to a pet cemetery and just see these inscriptions, you walked into our kitchen and into our hearts. And it'll if it doesn't tug your heart, you ain't got one. And also, just on a practical level, if you're ever writing, pet cemeteries are a great place to get names. Like Tuffy Ganella. Where else would you get a name like that?
Well, it's really to actually take the pet cemetery and the cremated pets idea to an actual funny location. There's a TV series called Vicious. I don't know if anybody's ever heard of that. It's a British sitcom. Sir Ian McKellen and Sir John Gielgud, I think.
No, is it Derek Jacobi?
Derek, that's what it is.
Jacobi. And the guy from Misfits.
Yes, he's got an interesting Welsh name. I can't remember. He's also in Game of Thrones.
Yes.
But I mean, the running joke is that they have this dog that doesn't walk, move, has no fur, doesn't really do anything, and is like 25 years old. And along the mantelpiece in like the main room, the main living room, there's 15 or 16 urns from all the other pets, and they're constantly talking about, where are we going to put him, and where's this one going to go? But it's usually with a much more lighter tone, just to kind of show how long these two people who treat each other so horribly have been together with these pets that they love so much that they're, they have to immediately have another pet in the house every time that one goes. But it's just that's one of those things, and we've started our own collection after Tomas passed away earlier this year. So we're gonna have one of those mantelpieces, hopefully, or not. Hopefully, I don't know. It's such a hard thing to think about, but it's a way to keep your pets with you for a very long time.
Yeah, I have the wooden box that they did, and a plaster paw print from my first dog. Oh. And then when the second dog passed this year, I was like, well, I don't need the giant wooden thing because it's got a lot of room. So I'm like, let's just do a paw print. The plaster paw print I really like. And then the ashes, whatever. And my ex is in theory going to take them and put them in, our old house and all that in the backyard where my cats are buried, where I buried my 2 cats, But it's a weird thing when you don't live in the house that you buried your other animals. So it's like, well, I'll just keep them with me. And then they give you these pendants that you can have wherever, and they have a little bit of the ashes. Like you have so many options now, and it's kind of like crazy.
Yeah.
But what I absolutely think is awesome. So Janet Leigh from Dapper Men and other projects like Pride and Prejudice and all that, I actually commissioned her for my first dog to do a sketch, like a full color, really nice. And she really was doing a lot of animals. If you've ever seen her at a show, she has all these funny like play on like Wolverine.
Oh yeah.
But Wolverine, like
I have her Robin.
Oh yeah, that's
excellent.
Cute.
Yeah.
So she did my first dog Unagi, and then she wasn't at Heroes this year. I was going to commission her to do my second dog Uno while he was still alive, but he passed before Heroes, and then she didn't go to Heroes. So like one of those things that I thought about is commissioning her or like Mike Norton or one of these artists that just loves animals and like a lot of their work is animals, like commissioning them to do a piece of your animal. Like that is going to be, a far more like rewarding memory of your dog or your cat than having the ashes stuffed away in a box or in a pendant. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Although with a pendant, it sounds like you can accessorize. So you can have, like a pendant, maybe a bracelet, just like a.
I mean, if we could make a complete outfit out of our animals, I think, and I don't mean like fur, I mean like, tucked away in like jewels, and like Pat could do a drag performance decked out in all of the different animals, in different ways.
I have a friend that mixed the ashes of his cat in with his tattoo ink.
Oh yeah, there you go.
I've heard of that happening,
heard of
mostly
that
with
too.
people, not with pets.
Yeah.
Interesting.
We've gone off in crazy directions.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
So I have to come back to this because I had the most ridiculous outfit on tonight. I have to at least inquire as to my fellow podcast hosts here what exactly they're wearing, because I might have you beat in the most ridiculous. So let's start with Bill and maybe.
I am wearing a reproduction Black Sabbath 1978 tour T-shirt, and I have a pair of red shorts on.
And by shorts, we're referring to.
By exercise shorts.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Steve.
Well, let's see. The only thing that I changed out of when I came home from work was my pants. So I'm just wearing shorts, but I'm still wearing black socks.
Oh God!
My collar, my polo shirt, striped polo shirt. It just when I come home after work, like the only change I make is I kick off my shoes and I take off my pants, and that's.
Oh my God! My socks are the first thing to come off.
Oh.
I'm one of those people who ends up with like
off,
I end up with like the sock marks that come. It's it's sad.
Matt.
So I am also wearing black socks. So high five.
God.
And I'm actually going through this phase where like I keep wearing really sort of like drab polos to work, and my shorts are sort of just either like a muted brown or like a khaki color. And I have this really, really crazy collection of colorful socks, and lately I'm like, don't I have any like sane socks? Don't I have like a brown or like, and this morning it was like, well, I'm wearing a black shirt, so should I wear the socks I have that look like Piet Mondrian or... And then I picked black, so it was just, I thought I would look a little too crazy coming down the street. And I'm also wearing the brand new hat I bought earlier this week because I wrecked my favorite sort of sun hat thing, my little Panama hat. So I went on a little mission on the weekend and found some nice hats at a what do they call it when there's a place that specializes just in hats? Is that
haberdashery?
Haberdashery.
Yeah, I love that word.
Well, as long as it's a fedora, do you constantly tip it and say "my lady" at any woman who walks by?
Panama hat. I do
Panama
not
hat.
own
Then
a
you're
fedora.
okay.
Oh, well, I got an even better greeting. Just afternoon, Governor.
Oh.
It's one of those
Morning, Governor.
I do that only
Super
every
hats.
time Jason is watching Masterpiece Classic.
Nice. Justin, what are you wearing?
Okay, from top to bottom, I am wearing a nice black South Carolina Gamecocks hat that just says Cox.
Cox.
Nice.
Cox. Cox.
I am wearing a shirt that is 4 sizes too big for me. It's an old Scout shirt that is purple that has a bald eagle that is supposed to look like Lord Baden-Powell, but it just looks like he has dookie under his nose instead of a mustache. And
Congratulations, by the way, on the Scouts.
Oh, I know. I'm so stoked about that. Never mind. And I'm wearing red basketball shorts and camouflage woolly slippers.
Whoa, I love the slippers. That's awesome.
They're comfy.
Although camo, that could go either way. But
We're going to go back to that hat. And, Bill or Matt, I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure of going to the Carolinas or around this area. But I moved down here from Connecticut. And that was the first time I'd ever been to North Carolina or South Carolina. And we get out of the car. I'm getting gas or something, and some guy walks by with a green hat that says Cox on it in huge white letters. That's all it says. There's nothing that has like the USC logo. There's nothing that has like an actual bird on it. Just Cox. Cox. And I was like, whoa, this place is more liberal than I thought it was. And then my brother, who actually did go to South Carolina for school, he graduated from USC. We were at his commencement speech, and Chris, what's his face from Hardball?
Chris Matthews.
Chris Matthews from Hardball actually did his commencement. And at the end of his commencement, everybody stood up. They did the fight song. And just about 2 people away from us was this little old lady, curly white hair, had her usual Friday, roller set, and like her kind of that loose, almost like a house dress, but not really thing that old women seem to wear when they think nobody's looking or caring. Just at the end of the fight song, everybody in this giant arena screaming at the top of their lungs and punching the air, Cox, Cox, Cox. And I looked over at this little old lady, and she had fire in her eyes, screaming, Cox. And I just, at that moment, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with the Carolinas? So much. But it's so ridiculously wonderful. And anytime somebody new to the Carolinas areas, usually people from up north, come down and see that, I love that look of like wide-eyed, what the hell, that goes onto their face. It's so much fun. But yeah, congratulations, Justin, for having an awesome hat.
Thank you. I actually have it in white. I have it white and black, so.
Brilliant.
So I have to say again, I feel like I do have you all beat. Back around Christmas, they had this underwear sock combination at Target, and the socks are blue. They're not black, but they are darker blue with red chrysanthemums, red toes, red heel, and white like checker little. They're vaguely flowers, but they're very low fidelity, 8-bit sort of looking things. So that was one style. I don't know if that's like, I don't know the art style. I assume it's something from Europe, Scandinavia, perhaps. But they came with this amazing red and white checkered trunks that, just totally they looked awesome. Like the socks weren't even my thing, but the underwear was like, yes, this is perfect. So I'm wearing that with my Totoro, Miyazaki Totoro Matryoshka doll shirt that is also sort of a darkish blue, but again with the 3 different Totoros, like, smaller, medium, large, like nested doll. And that's my outfit. So again, I had to sort of, I love Justin's outfit. Actually, is probably the most awesomely incongruous between the Cox hat and the slippers, the camo slippers, but I had to check that.
The large Totoro with the big smile always freaked me out.
Really?
Yeah.
Because I actually found the Totoro to be very warm and welcoming. When I watched Nausicaa, and when I watched just last night, I actually watched Spirited Away, and I've seen it hundreds of times now. But like those 2 movies have genuinely disturbing moments in them.
Mhm.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
you just, especially if you're a little younger or if you're just like not paying attention and you kind of turn your head and you're like, what the hell is with this giant chicken thing with a leaf lily pad on his head? What the hell is that? Like it just like especially Spirited Away, just moments and characters of just nightmare. But if you follow the actual story, it's sort of like, it feels more friendly and welcoming. But yes, Nausicaa, especially with how early it was, like it's creepy. Like there's some creepy, scary shit in there. But Totoro, I never found it too, especially the music. The music's so happy and just joyous, and Totoro like is so benevolent. Like he never does anything in the movie that's at all like scary. Like he's just so welcoming and happy.
Yeah, I just don't know, that always freaked me out, and the cat bus always freaked me out.
Oh man, the cat bus too. Like that's like the Deus Ex Machina. Like out of nowhere, they're completely screwed and lost, and hey, here comes the cat bus. Even though it's kind of a disturbing idea.
Which was great to kind of see referenced in Captara.
Yes.
With the cat tanks.
Yes.
But except these cats actually look, well, for one, a lot more organic, and they look terrified. I don't know, like, what's really funny, Bill, that giant sort of like cat face with the giant teeth, just looking in that dead-eyed smile. In Captara, these cat tanks look like they're just terrified. They're like, oh my god, we're going to be going where? It just has the best faces.
Well, like, what's his name? Who's the artist? I forgot.
Kagan, I think is his last name. I
Yes.
can't remember first name.
He was saying when we were Heroes that they were actually, I think Chip in the script said something like they were meant to be like Grumpy Cat. And when you look at it, you go, oh yeah, it's kind of Grumpy Cat, and a very, like you said, like freaked out. Oh my god, why am I doing this? What the hell is wrong with this universe that I'm in? Like look on their face. It's awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yep.
And that's the first comic we've mentioned, I think, today.
No, we mentioned what earlier? We mentioned
Samurai Jack.
We said
Samurai Jack.
We said Bendis.
Yep.
But then we brought something else up too, but I can't remember it. Yeah. I got some good scores at that convention I went to.
Really?
Last weekend.
Yeah, I saw those pictures. That's some pretty interesting.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Giant-sized man thing.
You all have to get a copy at some point in your life just to hold it and say,
I've always wanted a giant-sized man
thing.
That comic sounds almost as funny as the book that I got in the mail, which is the Big Hard Sex Criminals.
Wait, what? Is that like the collection?
Yeah, so a friend of mine was at a recording of Seth Meyers, and he interviewed Matt Fraction, or maybe Chip Zdarsky. I'm not sure.
He definitely interviewed Matt. I know that.
Okay, so it was probably Matt, and so I guess everybody in the audience got a copy of the hardcover for Sex Criminals. And my friend doesn't read comics, so he mailed it to me, and it arrived just this last weekend. And, knowing me, I have this track record of taking the most inappropriate comic I can possibly pick to the local coffee shop. And I really felt like I outdid myself by reading Sex Criminals there, because I was flipping through it and I was thinking, like, oh, this is about sex, but there's not going to be that much nudity. And there's like a few pages where there's just like, there's like breasts and there's dildos flying, and I just thought, yeah, I am like really becoming the local creep who takes his like freaky comics to a public venue to read. But
it'd probably be worse if it was like an ice cream parlor or something, like a Cold Stone Creamery or a Dairy Queen. Maybe might be even worse. But a coffee shop, they afford you some kind of alternative.
Or a playground.
Playground. Ugh. I always bring my Lady Death comics to the playground. You never know. Yeah. You might strike up an interesting conversation.
Speaking of comics and comic-related podcasts, Bill, did you hear that Ron Richards is back on iFanboy?
Yes, I did listen to the Ant-Man episode.
Okay,
Yeah.
because he's done a couple movies.
Yeah.
Which, he did Days of Future Past, I think, and he did another one. Now that he is no longer with Image, he is back on the show as a regular member.
Uh-huh.
And oh my God, I listened to this week's, and it is classic, ridiculous. They go off on awful but awesome tangents. Like awful in the sense that they are almost off topic, but they are amazing. Like I am so happy that he is back on that show. Not that I didn't like Paul, not that I didn't like, just the two of them, but good God.
Colin's the other guy, right?
Connor.
Connor. Okay.
Connor and Josh. Like these are the people who I first listened to back in the 2000s, I think, and was like, this is amazing. I want to get back into comics because of this, and I want to do comics
I never
podcasts.
really connected with iFanboy too tightly.
Well, no, I know you were 11 o'clock, and
I was
about comics.
I think my trajectory
Around
was
comics.
I think now the first comic book podcast I ever listened to was awful.
Really?
Fanboy Radio.
Oh, I never listened to them.
They yelled a lot.
Oh, jeez.
They were excited and they yelled a lot.
So basically, they need to get.
But
laid.
I think it was from Word Balloon to Around Comics to 11 o'clock. I think that was the trajectory. I never really connected with CGS either.
Oh yeah, we talked about that.
But the thing I will say with CGS is Peter Rios is probably one of the best interviewers around, apart from Suntress. I mean, that's a whole different vibe.
Suntress has great interviews, and then he has interviews where I'm like, you just listen to him and you go, man, get to the question. And anyone who's ever done interviews, like you totally have a different perspective when you listen to interview shows. But like Suntress recently, on a couple of the things I heard, like the Kelly Sue interview he did, I'm like sitting there like, man, get it out. Like, get your question out. Like,
right.
He wasn't even making good points. It was just like total fish out of water freak out. Like, I was like, man, come on.
Was it because he was talking to a woman and he wasn't sure how to talk to a woman?
No, I don't think it's that as much. I think Kelly Sue is one of those people who, I'm sorry, Havoc is being a pain here.
No, I'm enjoying listening to it. It's hilarious.
Kelly Sue is one of these people who is so entertaining in her own right that you really don't have to do much to get a lot out of her. But like something came up, and I don't remember now. It was a couple days ago. Like what it was. I think it was to do with the fact of like people ask her all the time, "How do you write female characters? Like how do you write strong female characters?" And she is so over that question. She is so absolutely like, are you fucking kidding me? Just write a good character, and who gives a shit if it's male or female? Like, that's detail. Like, just write a good character, and that's all that you care about. Like, this is a stupid question. I don't want to answer it.
Mm-hmm. Well, like, they need to
was thrown by it. Like, he just didn't know how to come back. He was like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, it is a stupid question. I mean, we don't talk to, you don't go up to Jason Aaron and say, like, so how do you do good male characters? Like,
how do you write a character with a beard?
Yeah, like, is it because you also have a penis and this fictional character has a penis that you can write them better? Is that like it's such a bizarre question, and I mean, it's like asking a gay person how they can write, how can you write a compelling gay character? It's like what. You write what you know, and if you're a good writer, you can write even what you don't know, or you do research, or you find out, or you talk to other writers. It's weird that these questions are still being asked. And along that point, I read this great sort of blog post this morning by a woman who does a lot of. She's actually a comic reader. She's a comic collector, and somebody had asked her the question. Why aren't there more women in comic shops? And I shared it online, but I've gone back and I've actually read it several times today, and I just think it's such a great observation from her. She said it's such a stupid question. It's like you're assuming by asking that question that women shouldn't be in comic shops, or women don't go to comic shops, or it's kind of beyond my comprehension that a woman would want to go to a comic store. And it's becoming more prevalent now that obviously there are a lot more women writers, there are a lot more women artists, there are a lot more, visible, women who are out there promoting sort of nerdy or geeky type media or type pursuits and hobbies, but it's still this kind of bizarre idea that, well, it's not really a women's, it's not women's space. Like, this isn't something that women want to do. But you could also just kind of say the same thing about any non-white male kind of person, heterosexual white male person,
Right.
In comics. Like, why are there not more, black readers of comics? Why are there not more homosexual, readers of comics? Why are there, not as many trans readers of comics? Like, I mean, these are all bizarre questions that, really don't need to be really, thought about too much to answer. And that, well, if you have a fan base for a type of art form like comics, there's going to be all those different types of minorities or other types of people who are not straight white men who are reading these things. It's just that you may not see them because that's not your personal experience as a straight white man reading. You're not seeing a lot of readers of color, people at the store who are women or, possibly trans or gay or whatever. And, of course, there's a lot more visibility when there's a lot more of the characters that show the diversity of the readers. And then that's where we get those other questions like, why aren't there more gay characters? Why aren't there more characters of color that are more popular? Why aren't there more women characters who don't look like, their boobs are basically needing to be held aloft by skyhooks? It's really strange. Like it's kind of they're all, I don't know, just useless questions. Just keep making better comics, keep making them more diverse.
Can I contribute something to this and my
sure.
limited experience as a writer?
Yeah.
I've sent you guys a video, and I don't want to sound like constant self-promotion, but I'm launching a Kickstarter fairly soon with a project that I am working on with Mark Parman of Grizzly and the Bear Patrol.
Mm-hmm.
And the lead character in that book, going into that story, it's a middle-aged guy named Lou Giannetti. He's a divorced father of two. And going into that story, I had every intention of providing his dealing with his own sexuality as an element of that character and why his marriage broke up when it did. And when Mark sent me back some of the initial character designs, it was as if the character was talking to me, say, dude, I'm not gay. And that was one of the strangest experiences in terms of the creative process I've ever been party to. So I think I kind of did it from the, it's almost like the shoulder the burden of writing gay characters, and here I am like, oh, okay, I just made a gay character straight. It was the strangest experience that, literally the character was talking to me saying, I'm not what this element of your intention is. And that gave it almost tied certain other things up in a bow. And that was a very interesting experience when you do hear people saying, sometimes the characters write themselves. Even at the outset, this one started doing it for me.
Yeah. Well, and that kind of ties into what Andrew Wheeler said in his article on Comics Alliance, and I think that was one that got shared around a lot because it was the one where he talked about gay characters don't just appear organically; they have to be a conscious decision by the author to put that character in.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not just like, oh, well, the character becomes gay, or like, oh, it just that's how it feels right now. And it's a combination of both. I mean, obviously, you went into it wanting to write a gay character, but then the gay character just wasn't, like, that aspect of the character wasn't really there when you started, digging more into where you wanted it to go. But you can always make another conscious decision and say, okay, well, I'll make another character gay, or I'll put another character in there that is of color or whatever. But that's kind of like why I think that article was so controversial, especially with other authors, was that, sometimes when you go into creating a type of character, for the sake of creating that particular type of character, it might change.
Mm-hmm.
It might not, the intention might, be there, but the way that it works within the story may not support it.
And it's so weird because, like, the thing I'm working on, like, the whole premise of the character as a drag queen is that they're gay. I mean, there are absolutely transsexual, or not transsexual, sir, but like transvestites who are straight, who identify as a heterosexual male or whatever. But like, when I started writing this thing I'm doing, like, it's a drag queen. It's somebody who absolutely is a gay character. I have not gotten art for it yet, but like, I can't even imagine anything coming back where that changes, because it is so core to the identity of the character that I have in mind. That
whereas mine, it wasn't core to the story.
Yeah,
and I think that's where I allowed myself to make that change.
And that's a bold thing where you can accept what the character, like, you hear writers talk about how characters, like, they speak to them in a sense, and when a character makes, and you hear about it all the time from writers where characters surprise them, and I don't know if that's through the writing or through the whole artistic process where you're doing a comic book and you get back pages and you go, you know what? This isn't where I was going, but I like it more, and I feel like it's a better fit. So that's really cool that, like, that they can surprise you in that way and that things can evolve, So I think that's really neat. I love that. I mean, I hope someday to have that experience, It
was just really interesting to me that this was so early in the process.
Sure.
I don't know. It was. I'm glad it happened when it did, because that affected so many different elements, whether they be the dialogue with his ex-wife, which took a much more realistic tone from that point on. It was just really interesting that. And again, there was so much in the visualization of it too. Right. And I think that that shows how much the art and story go hand in hand. Here we are, we're not even at the point where we're doing sequential, and already there's a marriage. It was just a very interesting experience.
That's really cool,
and I'm really glad it happened, because I like him straight. And if I have the opportunity to tell more stories with this character, I think his romantic journey is that much more honest now.
Right.
And also, going back to comics, and we're talking on the con, I passed up on something that I think I'm really going to regret.
Oh, no.
They had the Absolute Crisis edition for $70.
Oh, damn.
And I really am regretting not picking that up, but I also am still somewhat in austerity mode, and I don't think I can pay that much money on one item like that right now. So, yeah.
Hey, I've got an idea of a way to finish this real quick. How about we name a comic that we have not read, but we do want to read?
Okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, since it's your idea, you go first.
I gotta think.
Well, I know it actually just released last week, but Kate Lett's new book, Power Up, which is kind of like a bizarre mashup of Sailor Moon and Adventure Time. Sounds like a real fun read, and I've heard it's good, but I want to read it. I have not had the chance to, because my LCS didn't get it in last week, so I'll have to scour the stores around Charlotte to try and find it.
Okay.
On the topic of Sailor Moon, I accidentally had the sound up on my iPad, and I was at work, and I was quickly checking on my news feed on Facebook, and this video started to automatically play, and it was a woman transforming into Sailor Moon, but her costume was Cup of Noodles themed. And I didn't really mean for this to play, and then out of nowhere, totally silent in my office, people could hear cup of noodle, just out of nowhere, and I was just like horribly embarrassed, and it's like, and then I felt compelled to explain what I had watched, and it just didn't make any
Made it
sense.
worse.
I was like, it's Sailor Moon with cup of noodles, and yeah.
You should have just said it was porn and just left it like that. No more questions.
Yes.
Well, Matt, what about you?
Okay, I've got a copy of Wolf #1 by Alice Cott and a ton of other people. Matt Taylor, Lee Lowridge, Clayton Cowles, Tom Mueller, and I have no idea what it's about, but it was just suggested to me at the comic shop, and the cover looked really cool, and the inside art looks neat, and I'm going to find out what it is next week.
Okay. Brian?
Well, I just want to say Alice Cott is amazing, and I love Zero, and I love his, Bucky Winter Soldier series he did. But my favorite is the Secret Avengers that he did with MODOK. It is trippy and awesome, and definitely he's one of my up-and-coming favorite writers. But I have to say that if I had to pick a book right now that I really could just jump right into, and not that I couldn't, because I actually have these, I want to, especially in light of the Justice League recent issues, I want to go back and reread all of Kirby's New Gods, the original 4 hardcovers, not original hardcovers, but the ones they put out a few years ago, and I have them. I think I lent one of them to somebody, so that may or may not be in my possession. But I've got all of them, and I really, especially with everything with Darkseid and the whole thing, I really want to go back and just dig into those. There's also an interesting article that I read about Kirby contributing to the authorship of a lot of the Marvel stuff, and how Stan Lee's story over the years has changed, but Kirby's has stayed pretty consistent. And I just read it the other day, and I mean, it just reaffirms my belief that Kirby is totally underrepresented and undersold as part of the Marvel history. And even though now with the lawsuit he's getting co-creator credits, I wish more people understood and had an appreciation for what he brought to it.
See, I have a problem with that, because most of the people that I know that read comics, I'm saying read comics, have had that appreciation for decades.
It's more the casual fan.
It's more the casual fan then? Okay.
Yeah, no, because and this is partly the winners write the history kind of thing. Because when Kirby left Marvel, Stan Lee remained, and even in spite of some of the problems he had with Marvel over the years, I think it actually started with the origin of Marvel, or the Marvel Universe. That's what the article was talking about, how even if you go back to that, a lot of things that were commonly understood credit sharing between the two was rewritten because Kirby had left to go to DC. And that, from there on, it sort of charted that new history that was just reinforced over the years. And if you go back to the original interviews and sources, before that, Stan Lee would say, "Oh, no, that was Jack's idea," or Jack and Steve Ditko, they were the ones who did this or that. He was much more amenable to those people back prior to them leaving. So, I totally know what you mean. A lot of the people who are comic book fans and comic book readers over the years, they know.
Yeah.
And they see, even the article was talking about Kirby's reuse of older stories and his Marvel stuff. And when you see that, it just makes it even clearer that, you can accuse Kirby of not being very original and reusing stuff, but clearly it's Kirby. It's not, Stan Lee borrowing from Kirby. I mean, either could be possible, but one is certainly more plausible.
Yeah.
So.
I also have a problem with the people with their revisionist history that Stan didn't matter with this element of the argument. From my opinion, as interesting as the concepts of that are presented in New Gods are, and they're mind blowing. You know, they're very much of their time. God bless them. Like the forever people, hippies as superheroes. Wonderful idea. But from my standpoint, and I would challenge anybody to really disagree with me on this. Jack was never as good as when he was with Stan, and
Sure.
and Stan, with the possible exception of Spider-Man 1 through 38, was never as good as he was with Jack.
No, and I totally agree with that too. I don't,
because there are people that are of that mindset that Stan Lee's contribution was maybe like 2%, and that's just not the case.
Well, it's all idea versus execution. If you have these ideas and you do your thing, but you never get it out there, what good is it? You know what I mean? Like the fact that Stan Lee was so instrumental in railroading through a lot of these things can't be discounted. But I guess it's the reactionary thing when all you hear for years at an official level is Stan Lee created Marvel, or Fantastic Four, X-Men, yada, yada, yada. And it's like, no, it's more complicated than that. There was actually a co-creator who in some ways did even more than Stan in some, but it's I guess it's just a balance thing. So I think we definitely are in a sort of a bubble where Kirby is well known, but to the common layperson out there watching Marvel movies, especially after everyone has a Stan Lee cameo, like, come on, Kirby can't make a cameo. He's dead. But, like, acknowledge the history, acknowledge the authorship. So,
well, I know what you mean. I mean, especially younger kids who think Stan Lee is a god because, I mean, honestly, he's been prepped up that way through, the different conventions and his cameos and Stan Lee. Everybody knows who Stan Lee is. Kids today don't realize who Jack Kirby was and what Jack Kirby meant. I mean, Bill's right. I mean, Jack Kirby, Stan Lee worked together wonderfully. However, Kirby, I don't think it's almost like the Bill Finger, Bob Kane.
Absolutely.
And, I mean, to the point where Jack Kirby at least has gotten recognition through his works with DC, where, Bill Finger did not. So, I see both sides of the story. It's amazing. I think that as it gets older, or I should say maybe in the future, it's not going to be quite as bad once Stan Lee passes, because then they'll be both kind of on equal footing when it comes to the people's minds.
Well, and that's the thing, if you go all the way back, and I really love Marvel: The Untold Story. It's such a great book if you haven't picked it up. But they had been partners working at Marvel and working on those books before the superheroes. They were working on romance books together for a while. So like they knew how each other, how the other person could work and how the creative process really did work as a team. So, that balance, who did more, who designed this, who put the dialogue in that person's mouth, it's kind of an odd argument to have when they both had so much to contribute. But yeah, I mean, for decades, Stan Lee was not just the face, but also the voice of Marvel. Yeah. It was his writing that, was in the editorial parts of every comic, in the letters page of every comic.
Well, after he stopped writing.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was boosting the fan club. It was his catchphrases were all over the place during the 80s when he wasn't writing anything for sure, at least not anything worth reading. And of course, his movie cameos. He's been in every Marvel movie even before it became like a thing. He's somewhere, I think. But Justin, you're right. Within 10, 20 years, I mean, he's a fragile old man now. He's like, what, 92?
Yeah.
In about 10 years or so after he passes, and he's not having a cameo in every Marvel movie, as long as somebody doesn't have the stupid idea to put a CGI version of him in every movie.
Oh, right.
So someone just got an idea.
Well, they already did in Big Hero 6. He's in Big Hero 6. But, I think they will eventually get back onto that equal footing in terms of, popular understanding of how they contributed to all these characters.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah.
They almost have to.
Okay, so Brian, anything else apart from the fourth world there?
And honestly, like the Spire that came out recently, we'll probably talk about it in full next time. It was amazing. Or did we talk about it last time? I
We
can't
did.
remember.
We did, but yeah, I mean, hopefully number 2 will be out by next time, so we can talk about that too.
It's probably one of the best new comics out from Image or anything. I just love it.
Okay.
Love it.
More of it, please.
Justin, how about you?
Okay, Bill. This might give you a little bit of an arrhythmia or something, but something I've never read before, and I was
X-Men.
No, well, close,
I'm kidding.
very close. I have been lent the 4, or at least the first 4. I don't know if there's more than that. Archive of the New Teen Titans.
Oh wow,
That's fun.
So I am going to be dipping my toes. I've read the Judas Contract once before, but the Titans was never my thing. I know that they were yours.
Oh,
Legion
yes.
was mine. So I'm looking forward to reading these guys.
Okay, now just when you read it, keep in mind, it's 40-year-old men writing these characters in the 80s. But some of it's dated.
I'm sure it is.
Some of it is really dated, but I do think, with the exception of Crisis, that was George Perez at his peak.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. I'm not gonna. I don't do
I'm
the
glad
whole
you're gonna
dating thing.
finally read. That's awesome. Yep. That's awesome because when I got back into comics after a 4-year gap, with that whole, you hit 13 years old and things change and other things matter more, and I really went cold turkey. I mean, it was literally December of 1980. I stopped dead, and when I got back into comics, the New Teen Titans was the title that really spoke to me because they were my age, and it was action that it was a comic that I didn't realize this was the comic I was always hoping for when I was younger, and I had it then. So, and it's at least the first 50 issues are a really impressive run. When they get to the Baxter separation, it's a little strange, but I don't think your archive editions will go that far. But I hope you enjoy. That's great.
Thank you.
2 things I'm looking forward to. Well, 3, but one's going to be way off in the distance. I did pre-order the first trade of Descender, which some of my cohorts here have enjoyed. So
that's great.
That's way down the line.
So good.
Just because I'm in a biblical mood, in the next DCBS box, I have the first 2 issues of Covenant.
Oh, let me know how that is.
Yeah, so good or bad, I'm interested in seeing how that is. So there was something about it that spoke to me. And, Liefeld does have a history with the church, and we'll see. We'll see how that goes. And the other one, though, is when the second time I was away from comics was when America's Best Comics hit from Alan Moore and from Wildstorm. And though I've collected 4 of the 5 Promethea hard copy volumes, I wanted to read it in sequence. So I only read the first one, and 2 was missing. Con I went to this past Saturday, I was able to find number 2 at a very sensible price. So the remainder of Promethea is something I'm really looking forward to reading.
Sweet.
I've peeked and seen the pretty J.H. Williams pictures, but I didn't want to get involved in it until I could read it in a fully sequential manner. So that's the thing I'm looking forward to, Promethea.
Yay.
I don't
That's
remember where
true.
I stopped on that, but yeah, I loved it.
I still need to go back and start from the beginning and find a copy of Neonomicon if there's anything out there.
Oh, I have that whole thing.
Oh, you do?
I should try to get that to you
Yeah.
somehow.
And I think
I may just trek down there and break into your house and take it and
yeah. And I think there is another printing of Neonomicon happening soon.
You'd think
There's
there would be.
there's a really weird. I'll consider it weird. I'm sure other people will not. It's $150 box of comics for Alan Moore. It's called The Road to Providence.
Yeah.
And it's got all 4 issues of Neonomicon and all of the cover variants for it.
Oh Lord.
And then the 2 issues of Cemetery. There was some series that he did, like just a mini series he did before Neonomicon, and it's got 4 versions of that plus the hardcover collector's edition of Neonomicon and a couple other variants that were specific to different comic shows. So it's only 6 comics, but you get 15 or 20 versions of each one.
Is Avatar not on Comixology at all?
I don't think so. I haven't seen anything online.
That's frustrating.
Yeah, I don't think they have the digitals. But if you want to pay $150 and get 30 copies of the same book, but with pretty covers,
How about
you can do that. I haven't seen any copies of Neonomicon other than that recently.
Okay.
All I can tell you about Neonomicon from what we talked about way back, fish dicks.
Fish sticks.
And I literally am not kidding when I say the conversation I had right before I did this show was about how the fish sticks at Captain D's are much better than the fish sticks at Long John Silver's.
Totally disagree.
I can't even make that up. I can't even make that shit up. That was the conversation I had.
I wish somebody would look into this with Comixology and Avatar, because with so many high-profile writers there, look at all Warren Ellis that he's done there, and
Sure.
Hickman's God is Dead. I can't imagine they wouldn't want that on a digital platform. The creators, at least.
Oh,
Well, it would be 90% crossed at this point, but
God, I hate that.
Yeah,
I've never touched Crossed. Everything I've heard about it sounds like it would just
So
rip
it
me out.
it looks like Comixology has at least some Avatar. They have they've got quite a few. They've got about 20 titles.
how many of them are crossed?
Let's see, 303, Absolution,
Christos Gage. Yeah.
Aetheric Mechanics, Anna Mercury.
So they got the
Oh.
Warren Ellis stuff. Okay.
Okay.
Doctor Sleepless, that was the one.
Oh, you know what? There's 2 more pages, so there's a lot more than 20 titles.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
But is there Alan Moore on there?
He could be the holdout.
Yeah.
His
for a
issue-
second
his-
there's a book called Dicks, and I thought I was going to scroll and see fish. So
His God is Dead, the
Oh, yeah,
anthology. That was really good.
Neonomicon is on here. It
There you go.
is. There's the whole series is on there.
Dix
Okay.
was Garth Ennis.
Dix?
Yeah, that was Garth Ennis.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah.
So and this is a
See,
ridiculous
we finally
aside.
talked about Dix.
We didn't
Well,
get
we were
to
talking
that.
about we were talking about cocks.
Damn
earlier.
it, you're right.
God,
we did
yeah,
get
that's
to
true.
that.
We did talk about That's okay.
So I just recorded Lovecraft. Like a friend of mine, Jared from Flame On, he came on. Like we were recording a project for his school or something, and I had never read Lovecraft, but he read 7 pages from the Nameless City.
Mhm.
Oh my God, that is the most boring, dry, drawn out bullshit I have ever heard. Like it totally fits that pulp genre, which I get now, but I'm just falling asleep listening to him record it. I'm like, that this has spawned the mythology that so many people use for this and that. It's amazing because how did these people get through it? It just seems so incredibly dry.
It can be. Some of their stuff is amazing. I mean, some of Lovecraft stuff is absolutely fantastic. Some of it is horrible.
Yeah.
And utterly racist and homophobic. That's all I know.
The stuff
Well,
that
more
we're
hippie.
Well, I'm out.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, a lot of what we think is Lovecraft was actually written by other people that
Based
who
on
had-
things.
yeah. His editor basically took all of his ideas and then just pimped them out,
Okay.
using Lovecraft's name, of course, but a lot of what we take for the core of the mythos is actually his.
I didn't know that.
But is it?
Sorry.
No, go on.
Yeah, since we were talking about Neonomicon, how much of Cross did Jason Burrows do?
I don't know.
Was it
Did he do much?
well, I think he was the first one. I think he was the first 10 with Garth Ennis. I didn't know how much he did after that.
No idea.
Yeah, I gotta check out more of his stuff. He's very good.
Oh no, he is.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was in Badlands, it looks like.
The Filth of the City, that Transmet story he did, that's
Yes.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, he was in the original Crossed. He did do the original Crossed. or some of it anyway, and some of Psychopath, it looks like, and Family Values. Yeah.
I want to get hired to do a book at Avatar and do like something with like puppies and like like people taking all of their library books back before they're passed due.
Nice time.
Call it palate cleanser.
Yeah.
Well, Avatar, they basically, when they started, that was like all bad girl stuff,
Was
right?
it?
Yeah, that was where Demon Slayer started, and
Did they do the like movie monster like revival stuff like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and
yeah, they did Friday the 13th. They did that weird RoboCop that was based on the Miller scripts.
yeah.
Yeah, Stargate, Species.
That's when I like remember seeing that label pop up, was like the really super graphic Friday the 13th covers and stuff.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure Billy Tucci, she and Lady Death was there before Chaos happened. Yeah, so.
Speaking of female porn.
Okay.
No, that's not. I have to say, we're not doing woofs, but if you are a fan of the female form in any way, shape, or form, sorry. I mentioned this to you guys before on the chat, but I have found a heterosexual porn that I quite enjoy, and those of you listening, whether you're straight or gay, if you appreciate the female form, if in other words, if you are not instantly like turned off by it, or alternatively, you appreciate a good blowjob video, I cannot recommend enough this thing called Felucia HD or Felucia Blowjob or Felucia. And if you Google them or you find them on your favorite porn aggregate, they have, I think, wide reach. This is the video that will change your mind about if you're gay and you don't think you'd enjoy heterosexual porn. This is the video that will change your mind.
I went through a really weird co-ed phase of watching porn in college. That was a really weird time.
It's not weird because like weird. I still enjoy softcore, like Skinamax or whatever. Like to me, men
those were something different. Those were something different. The Skinamax After Dark. I mean, you would have. I used to love. There was that one called Liz. Who am I? Am I Liz? Or am I Elizabeth? Wow. But in terms of the harder stuff, we went through this really weird co-ed phase where it'd just be a lot of boys and girls together watching porn, particularly the Jane Bond films.
Oh,
which were the Bond series then. And do you remember Viper? Who was like the villain? She had a tattoo that went from her neck all the way down and into her snizzy. And I props to you, honey. That takes some balls, but I'm just trying to remember some of the titles. Hannah Does Her Sisters, which wasn't.
What was the? Oh, there was like the story of O, or there was another character's name. Oh man, she was in a ton of stuff. Lady Chatterley's lover.
Oh, Emmanuel.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, 80s porn. Oh man.
Like that was like when you were a kid, even if you were gay, that was about as close as you got to anything good. So, and the men, back then the men weren't that ugly. I mean, there was the 80s hair and the 80s bush and all that, but the women, like you didn't see the parts that got you kind of like,
when things went to video, that's when it got, when you really started seeing underage girls. And and their stellar acting abilities, oh no, oh yes, oh no.
But that's my favorite. I still maintain that my favorite parts of porn, especially softcore, are the stories, and then the actual action is like whatever. But like even gay porn, you watch some of these, and the newer ones they get straight to it, but like the older ones, like my first porn.
Story.
My first porn was called Scores, and it was literally about a guy who fantasized about having sex while he was composing, and they played all of these great classical music pieces to gay porn, and it was awesome. It was like the best thing ever, and I found it in my adult video store.
The craziest porn movie I ever saw is a movie called Punk Rock, and this is total exploitation. It was filmed in '77 in New York, and I went into it, mainly looking from that music artifact position, and there in the last 30 minutes of the movie, there's no sex. It's all this storyline about this girl who disappears into the punk rock scene and hired killers that inhabit it. It was the weirdest thing. Like after a point, the story totally envelops what happened before, and and then I'm reading about this one particular guy who directed it, and he was kind of known for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
So we got the porn in there. Good.
Okay.
So honestly, that's where, when I worked at Blockbuster back in the day, we had this huge section of quote unquote dramas called Eros. That was the company that put it out. It was all softcore. It was as hard as Blockbuster would get. But we always wondered who would rent them. But now we know it would be Bill Zanowitz and Brian Pitter. Renting it for the stories.
I never rented smut. I just found it online or found it on Skinemax. In between the awful wavy lines back in the day when you couldn't quite see it, but it was.
But
there.
You could hear it. You could always hear that.
Totally hear it. Exactly.
The 2 weeks that I worked for a video store that was going out of business, which is quite the experience if you ever have the chance. I guess we're pretty much past that for the rest of the history of humanity, but. Independently owned video stores going out of business are a circus. But my favorite task was filing away all of the porn and realizing that there were genres that I'd never, ever thought of before. And just being like, oh, look at that. Oh, that's very creative.
Okay, I have one porn thing to say, because I used to work at a place that we had a back room, and there was this one man who I knew looked familiar. He came in and he had like a pile of smut, and he's writing out a check, and the check says Reverend so and so. And I look, and my mouth must have dropped open, and he winked at me and said, "You got to know what the other side's up to."
Wow.
Yeah, and I'm
That's
just
awesome.
like, I have never been back to they never went back to the United Methodist Church in Clearfield ever since.
Are you kidding me? That would be the church I would definitely go back to.
No, with
feel
this
like-
stuff. He got it like a lot of the midget porn.
Ooh,
Yeah.
he's exotic.
Oh, it was just wrong.
So my Baptist, I went to a private Christian school, and they had a teacher who they fired because they had to sign this thing that said we will be, upright, and we won't do this, won't do that. And that was their not get out of jail free, but that was is you do anything we don't like, we can fire you. And this math teacher, who was amazing, he taught algebra in high school so well that people who would not be at all math inclined actually did well in his class and was able then to go on and do better in other classes. They fired him because a student saw him coming out of an adult section of a mainstream video store. And I don't know what he had, it could have been totally whatever. But I much prefer to think of my religious leaders and my school whatevers as having a rich and storied sort of sex life, even if it was just their own little thing with videos, to the austere and missionary, people who otherwise we thought was everywhere. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. It just makes me reminds me of how awful they were to people that they caught, and then yet also probably were giant freaks themselves. They just didn't get caught.
Oh man, I'm just thinking about writing the show notes for this one. Oh my god!
Just blame it all on Brian.
I'm not blaming. I give him all the credit. But look at what we've talked about, from great sketch comedy shows to uh, to straight porn, to dead pets, to, to celebrity racism. I mean, I don't know where to start. I don't even think I'm going to bother. I just say people listen in.
It's a
Well,
potpourri.
yeah. Well, let's wrap this one up, but let's do this again. This was liberating. This was a
Definitely.
lot of fun. So, again, we're the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears Podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr as Comic Book Bears. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. And you can listen to us through the Earth 2 Network feed on iTunes and also on Stitcher Radio. And before we say our real goodbyes, let's all wish a very happy birthday to our brother Justin.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Oh, you know what? It's 7 minutes past.
Oh, well, they don't
now,
know that.
Now we get to
Not
sing.
in my time zone.
Can we sing that Morrissey song? It's not your birthday anymore.
Oh,
There's no need to be kind to you. Sorry, Justin. Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Billy Z.
I'm Justin Allen.
I'm Brian Pittard.
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Matt Broussard.
You're going to hear an explosion and a woof and something after that. And, we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Whoa.
I go to loud places to search for someone to be quiet with, who will take me home. You go to loud places to find someone who will take you higher than I took you. Didn't I take you to